get together on the platform of education, the science and culture for the promotion and keeping and establishment of peace. And I don't need to lecture on how important that is. We can see it in many places in Asia, in the Americas, in Africa, and in Europe, how important peacekeeping is and how many failures we have. So we are doing a very serious contribution to peacekeeping based on the platforms that I just mentioned, science, culture, and education, which are the original 3 platforms of UNESCO. UNESCO has now 5 major programs. Science, we have 2 science platforms. We have the natural science, which my colleague Dr. Neha Mita here and myself, we are representing, but we also have a social and human science platform. So the platforms that we have, the major programs that we have is education. I could now talk for a long time about what it is, but we are really promoting education for all in one sentence or in one slogan. In the science, it's science for sustainable development. In culture, I would call it culture for peace. And the social and human science, I would like to mention 2 aspects. It's to manage the social transformations that we are seeing in many places in the world and learning how to live together. Now, maybe India is one of the best countries in the world that we could learn how to live together from, with the cultural and ethical and ethnical and religious diversity in this country. In the communication and information sector, we promote the free flow of information. And how do we relate to maritime or marine? In the cultural sector, they are looking into underwater cultural heritage. This is also one of the first aspects, Dr. Arnab, that you and I discussed with each other. We also host the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, I believe, of UNESCO. They look into all aspects of ocean sciences, including into the ocean pollution of microplastics and nanoplastics, which of course India called for, beat the plastic pollution in 2018. In the natural science sector, we have the division of ecological and earth science. So we look into the ecology of coastal and ocean areas and deltas and rivers. We have the concept of biosphere reserves, which I would mention. You should all have one of these brochures in front of you, Pockets of Hope, the term minted by our director, Mr. Eric Fald, because we cannot exploit our planet much more than we are already doing. We have exceeded 8 billion people. We are expecting to reach 10.9. So we have to learn much better how to manage these biosphere reserves, which are pockets of hopes, which embrace all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Neha and myself, especially in the Maldives, but of course also in India, with India's huge coastline, very long coastline, and in Sri Lanka and in Bangladesh, not in Bhutan or in Nepal because they are landlocked, but in the other 4 countries I just mentioned, we are looking into coastal ecosystem management. Coastal ecosystems, of course, they include mangroves. India, together with Bangladesh, has the largest standalone mangrove forest in the world, the Sundarbans. This is biosphere reserve on the Indian side, the World Natural Heritage side, and the Bangladeshi side. We also look into coral reef ecosystems, seagrass beds, and other coastal ecosystems. And of course, in the cultural sector, we also have World Natural Heritage sites sometimes at the coastlines. And we have a concept at UNESCO called Global Geoparks. But India does not yet have a global geopark. But India has a lot of heritage sites and 12 biosphere reserves. Before I hand over, I just would also like to mention that the United Nations, of course, has a maritime organization, the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, So I would also encourage you to also reach out to our sister agency. They are looking into the safety of shipping and prevention of pollution caused by ships. Yeah, the two overarching priorities that UNESCO has is Africa, and again, one very warm welcome to our participants from Africa. My own family is half European, half African, half Ethiopian, half German. So I'm very proud to have you here. And it offers a room for South-South cooperation with whatever it is that we are coming up today with Dr. Arnab. And I think the South-South cooperation and Africa overarching priority, we should take it very serious. And I also believe that's in the interest of your organization and of the country. Today we will listen to the Maritime Research Centre to identify synergy opportunities between UNESCO and UNESCO New Delhi in particular and MRC. Just one final word. We have the term maritime and we have the term marine. Without sounding like a lecturer, which I don't want to do, but just to clarify, there are different definitions available for both of these terms, but maritime often refers to the oceans and to the coasts and to the shipping that goes on them, whereas marine more so refers to what's going on inside the oceans. So I think that's enough from my end, and again, very warm welcome on behalf of our director, Mr. Eric Fold, and on behalf of UNESCO. And now I hand over to Dr. Arnab Das to facilitate the rest of the session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was indeed a very, very encouraging and very insightful kind of welcome speech and introduction to the excellent work being done by UNESCO. Thank you very much for initiating this process. There's a long way to go, definitely, but I think it's a good start. We have the most senior people possibly who could be here and representing very unique dimensions of any strategic movement here on. I'm extremely glad to welcome Shekhar Dutt sir, former Defense Secretary, Deputy NSA, Governor of Chhattisgarh, and with so many years of, and he's still extremely active with the strategic community, very, very regular in all the discussions. So thank you so much, sir, for being here today. Armugam sir, I don't know whether he's from both sides. Sir has been, firstly, I mean, thank you for facilitating this whole initiation. And he was the former education minister in Mauritius for a very long time. He was the former director of UNESCO India, and he was also looking after Africa. And he is into many activities, doing a lot of charity work and a lot of very good work. Thank you very much, sir, for being here and encouraging us and being part of the whole process. We have Ambassador Anu Mudge, sir. Thank you very much for being here. Former ambassador to Mauritius, former ambassador of India to Mauritius. He has been instrumental in the Sagar vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. I mean, it was declared in Mauritius in 2015. He was involved right from the stage of drafting this and to bring it. And I think the Sagar vision is one of the most defining aspects of India's maritime consciousness and the maritime mindset that has now come in. And it's a very, very important start. And I think for us, the UDA for Sagar is a very, very important thing. So thank you so much for being here today and being so kind to MRC and to us in taking things forward. Avinash Mishra sir is here, advisor to Niti Aayog on water resource. Extremely kind to MRC, I would say, because MRC has reached out to Niti Aayog and he has been instrumental in taking it forward and extremely meticulously done. Every meeting, every aspect has been very, very meticulously kind of coordinated by his team, and we have been fortunate to have his support all the time. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Puran Pandey sir is here, has been part of the strategic community for a long time. He has headed a very important think tank in Germany, in Berlin, but he has been part of the whole aspect of strategy in India and globally. And again, very, very active today also in some very high-level interactions. NirDhwani Mule ma'am is here. Thank you very much for being so cooperative, and thanks to her, we have a young friends from Africa, because as Dr. Bueno said, Africa is a very important component, and if we can contribute as MRC to the development of Africa, and in whatever way, I mean, probably the governance aspect is very important in these issues. So we'll be very happy, and thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us and helping us in many ways. We have Commander Arun Sehgal, sir, my former senior in the Navy, but very, very active with various industry bodies, and he's been an entrepreneur himself for a long time, but has a very deep understanding of the whole maritime aspect and been my guide and mentor for a long time. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. Prafulji is here. Prafulji is, formally he is an advisor in the Maritime Research Centre, advisor Blue Economy. But I think I met him just after I set up MRC, and he's been there with me and on various aspects. I mean, interacting on all aspects, he has been there, and he himself has a very big identity. He is the one who got the dry port concept in the private sector to India for the first time. He got the air cargo complex in the private sector in India for the first time. So he has many, even the just-in-time inventory management was brought into India by him for the first time. And so he's been a third-generation entrepreneur, but has a very deep sense of geopolitics. And it's been a great journey together, building up MRC for a while. So, Siddiqui Saab, thank you so much for being here. And many people are here, and thank you all for being here and encouraging us to take this forward. Mr. Can you please put the presentation? So I'll give you a brief presentation on what MRC is about and what we are doing and what this UDA concept is. So the underwater domain awareness concept that we have built in or progressing in the Maritime Research Centre is more towards safe, secure, sustainable growth for all in the tropical littoral waters. I mean, all these terms will become clearer to you as we proceed. And I'm particularly mentioning the Indian Ocean region because it's important. And also, it is taking us towards the digital ocean. And when I say digital ocean, it actually doesn't limit itself to the marine ecosystem alone. It also addresses the issues of freshwater systems. So I'll try and cover some of these aspects. Yeah, so we call ourselves a technology-driven think tank focused on the UDA framework, but we take a lot of pride in bringing real-world problem solving, and where field research is given priority, because the tropical waters are extremely unique, and not much is available today because the technology, underwater technology developed during the Cold War era in the Greenland, Iceland, UK belt, which is a temperate and the polar region. So there's a lot to be done here, and we address policy and technology intervention and capacity building. I mean, acoustic capacity building is extremely important. Next. So my background, I've been part of the Navy for a long time, but I also got a lot of, thanks to Navy, I got a lot of time in IIT Delhi to understand the research possibilities. And I was again very uniquely placed to spend as a serving naval officer. I spent some time in University of Tokyo working on freshwater dolphins. And then post-Navy, I was in University of Singapore because there's a very unique lab called the Acoustic Research Lab, which has done pioneering work in tropical waters, because that's, I think, the most important thing that we would like to bring here. Next, please. So some of the recognition in 2019, one of our innovation, Dr. Beno, you will be very happy to know that we developed a technology tool to monitor underwater noise. And that is what got recognized in 2019. We were invited to France. There's a Brest, a place called Brest, which is a maritime hub there. And there, the European Union told me, have you gone to the IMO? And that time I had not thought of it, to be honest. But then, IMO, it's a country. I mean, they said we can take you, but I realized that it's only countries which are members of IMO. So being an Indian, working in Indian and, whatever. But, it's not so easy to drive through the system. But I was extremely lucky. It took me almost a year or a little more. But in 2021, MEPC 76, our paper has been listed in IMO for managing. And in the presentation, the chairman was very happy to know that we have a unique contribution to the tropical waters, because that is something missing. There are a lot of countries which are doing a lot of work, but the tropical aspect is missing. And there is some very unique aspect that need to be addressed. So they were very happy. So now I think it will come up for actual action in MEPC 80. So that's what the DG Shipping told me, Anu, you don't worry, you're relevant for the next 5 years in IMO. So we hope to make big contribution. And so now, having achieved that, I said, whenever it happens for IMO is a separate thing, but I am now trying to reach out to the government of India that under the Sagar vision, I think we should take the lead in the Indian Ocean region to bring a regulation. And everything is there. The technology tool is there. What needs to be done, everything is already done. So it just needs to go through the process and we should be able to reach out. The second recognition was defense technology recognition we got, where again, a technology tool to deploy a submarine was recognized. We were among the top 8 globally for this thing. And so we are happy that at least these kind of things, and this is all towards digital ocean. I mean, it brings transparency. We have a lot of youngsters working with us, IIT students, even TERI students have joined us. We are a truly multidisciplinary organization. We are happy to have even now students from abroad are also joining us. Monash University has been sending, Sri Lanka has been sending a lot of young people. So we have developed more than 50 innovative ideas. I mean, we don't have time to talk about it, but we are quite happy that these are in a very mature state, so we can move to the next level. Next, please. So in terms of education, we reached out to the All India Council for Technical Education. This is the highest regulatory body for technical education in India. And AICT has approved 10 of our courses, which can be now run directly. So any institution in India and abroad can actually just run these courses. These are all at different level, undergraduate, postgraduate level, and we can kind of build more courses going forward. The next, sorry, go back. We have also developed a lot of skilling programs which have been approved under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana and the Deen Dayal Upadhyay skilling program. So these are again very much ready, which can actually cover the entire gamut of skilling that is required in the underwater domain. So we have included even biotechnology and AI and robotics, because now when we talk about digital ocean, there is so much more that will come in. Next, please. Recently, 3rd of August, we have signed an MOU with INCOIS, International Centre for Ocean Information Services. That's a very important organization of the Ministry of Earth Sciences, which is driving the Digital Ocean Initiative of the Government of India. So we will be the back-end partner for data analytics with them. And I think there is a huge potential here to make the kind of contribution that we want to. And because this is so diverse, I mean, right from impacting the communities to even strategic security requirement, all can be addressed through this. Now we have partners who are supporting us for the seaweed work we are doing. We have developed a tool which can be used for policy intervention and also operational interventions. So there's a group which is operating in about 7 to 8 countries. They are backing us and they are supporting our initiative little beyond the seaweed as well. So we are very thankful to them. And I visited Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka may not be in the very best of state right now, but I think my visit, I could understand the requirements of smaller maritime countries, like island countries, where we can make a lot of difference. And it was a validation of our work, because I interacted with the top people there. I mean, the regulators, the naval chiefs, and various people involved in the maritime domain. And it was very heartening to see that they recognize the relevance of what we are doing. So just to quickly talk about the why this underwater domain awareness is important, why the tropical aspect is important. I mean, if you look at the new global order, the maritime or even the strategic interactions are happening in the tropical waters. And tropical waters have very unique political, economic, and military, I would call it a physical aspect. And not much of site-specific R&D has happened. So there is a tremendous scope for us to contribute here. Next, please. I mean, the whole Indo-Pacific strategic space itself, by definition, is the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. But the technologies that are available today, I mean, the ones which we are importing from the West, does not apply to these waters. So this is a very important aspect I think the entire strategic community need to take note of. And of course, when you talk about the Indian Ocean, the geographic position of India cannot be denied. And this is where I think it also puts a lot of responsibility that we have no choice but to play a leadership role. So that's a very important aspect and that's what gives me the encouragement. And now I think the geopolitical and geostrategic scenario is also kind of moving in our favor, that if India has already, I mean, there is an Indo-Pacific strategic construct, there is a Sagar vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. So we just need to keep running faster and do better. I think we'll be able to make the cut. Next. Now, even when you look at the water resource management, I think this is one of the most important. I mean, I'm just giving the example of India. If you look at the map here, there's already 20% water stress, right? And unless we do the water resource management effectively, we are looking at a very, very difficult situation going forward. I mean, I'll just leave it at that. And even the distribution is also not, I mean, you can see how skewed it is. So going forward, this is an area which requires significant attention. I mean, I'm talking about the dams are silted. I mean, again, this tropical condition comes in a very, very important way. I mean, our dams are silted, our rivers are silted. So how will we do any kind of desiltation effort? Again, underwater domain awareness becomes a very, I mean, the whole sediment management is a very important issue. Even we've been talking about Sagar Mala and various other big projects. Next, please. Water quality management is another very important area. I mean, there are so many places, there is significant amount of biological and chemical contamination. But I think we are not even aware of the level. I mean, there is I think there's a larger effort required. There's a lot happening. It would be wrong for me to say that not much is happening, but I think there's a lot of distance to cover. And here using technology can, I think, make a significant amount of difference. I mean, we can, in today's age, I think we can get real-time appreciation of the water quality across. So we are working on a couple of projects on these aspects. We've even done some field work also. Next, please. Now, when we talk about governance, maritime domain awareness is a term which took a lot of importance. The entire strategy community started using it. But my worry is that it remained an event-driven thing after the 9/11 globally, and I think after the 26/11 in India and the Indian Ocean region. But the bigger problem I see that it remained security-driven. So the other stakeholders had difficulty in participating in this whole thing. I mean, security community is always very conscious of data security and all that. But I think there is a lot of possibility of, giving them the space or the anxiety that they have. I think that can also be addressed if we can use technology effectively. But even, I mean, when we say the capacity building, can the defense budget really fund the kind of capacity building that is required? Next, please. So when we talk about the stakeholders, these are the 4 stakeholders. I mean, security, economy, environment, and science and technology. And all of them need to work together. And that's where I think the challenge lies. Next, please. Just to give you some examples of security, the Chinese submarines in our waters, how to deploy our own strategic submarine effectively. We had internal security issues. I mean, 26/11 is there, but now even the migration, I mean, the Rohingya crisis is just probably the tip of the iceberg, but there is so much more to worry about and kind of work on. Next, please. Blue economy. I mean, the Indian Ocean region is considered to be the hub of energy security because on one side you have the source and the other side you have the economic engines which need the thing. But there are so many other aspects that need to be talked about. I mean, it creates a lot of anxiety and security concerns. The second picture you see is fishing. Now, globally, there is a established Colorado University report that says that the fish stock globally is on the decline since 1996. But if you look at not just in India or in the Indian Ocean region, the bycatch, which is, the mechanical trawlers pick up things and, the bycatch is of the order of 80%. So on one end, you're short, but the wastage is of the order of 80%. So how do you regulate? How do you make sure that this is managed or rationalized is something we need to look at. And I think, again, underwater domain awareness becomes a very, very important area here. We have these oil rigs, their dependence on the environment and their impact on the environment, whole lot of aspects get covered here. Deep sea mining and deep ocean mission, Government of India has really, taken a lot of initiative, a lot of budget allocation is there. But I think there's a huge gap in the capacity building. And thank you to the Ministry of Earth Sciences that they've taken us as a partner for capacity building as well. So we could, Dr. Beno, what you said, we could even extend this to countries in Africa and various other, Indian Ocean, there are 42 countries. So there's so much more we can contribute. And I think Indian government is also very keen that this can become a diplomatic tool to reach out to these countries. Next, please. Now, again, marine environment and disaster management. Our environment impact assessment has been, I think there's a lot to be desired and a lot more work can be done. But what I want to bring out here is aspect of underwater noise. We've had so many major stranding events. There was a RTI, and in 2018, there were 80 big whale strandings in the Maharashtra coast alone. 700 kilometers of Maharashtra coast had 80 big whale strandings. And the strandings of these, bright whales, and these are 40, 50 feet big whales, actually, for 100 years before that, we had not cited any of them. So I have written a paper on the anti-piracy operation that got started in 2009. It is as a result of anti-piracy operation that the whole shipping lane got shifted more closer to the coast and the migration pattern got disturbed, and these stranding incidents started happening. I've written a detailed paper, journal paper, and it is well accepted by the researchers globally. But the point I'm trying to make here is that even when we look at policy interventions in various areas, I think these aspects deserve far more attention that we are able to give today. Disaster management, of course, I was in Tokyo soon after the Fukushima disaster, but the kind of systems, I'm not here to say that you can prevent a natural disaster, but with better systems, you can minimize loss of life and property. So that is something we need to really work on. Disaster management has to go to a very different level, and underwater domain awareness can be huge enabler. I come from the Northeast. There are seismic prone areas, but we can always have systems below water where we can actually quickly give you the alarm systems, which are already established. It just needs to be thought of and implemented. That's all. Even there, it doesn't require so much research. The uncertainties are far less now. Technologies are available. It just needs to be deployed in a more effective manner. Next, please. Again, science and technology will always be an enabler. But my only submission here is that many times we feel that science and technology can replace the traditional knowledge. India is a 5,000-year-old civilization, or even beyond. Beno actually corrected me when I was saying this. We have records of 5,000 years, but it is far beyond. So, we have survived and we have done well, I think, earlier. But now we are trying to replace everything from what we are trying to import from the West. So how can we actually scale up the traditional knowledge, and how we can actually map traditional knowledge onto the newer science and technology tools that are available would be a very good way to move forward. Our understanding of the ecosystem that exists below water is very shallow. We are not even aware, and how these components of the ecosystem interact with each other is a very important area which requires, if we want to steer development or sustainable development, that I think would be a first step. The second picture that you see is, can we put sensors all across? It's impossible. We have 20 lakh square kilometer of EEZ in India. I mean, there is a terrestrial India and there is a maritime India. But with all the digital tools that are available, AI and robotics that is available, I think we need to focus on these issues. And the digital transformation has to be very, very smart, and a lot more work is required to be done. But it requires significant amount of domain knowledge. I mean, today, AI, many people are doing AI. But unless you understand the domain, you will not be able to apply it there. So that is a very important area. So there has to be a focus on that. The two pictures that you see below are some of the research cruises I did in Tokyo. I mean, they have a seamless system where the academia and the industry kind of collaborate so seamlessly. Every young student gets an opportunity to be on a research ship, or even if he can't go, he can get data out of the ship, and he can contribute to the larger real world problem solving. So, I mean, we need to look at, I mean, that's what is the goal of MRC, that we have to make it more real world problem solving kind of a initiative rather than, bringing more theoretical understanding. I think there is enough that is existing, but how do we kind of understand the local conditions and make it more site specific? Next, please. So this is the broad framework that we've developed. If you look at all the 4 sides, security, economy, environment and disaster management research, they may have their own requirement, but the core will be acoustic capacity building. Just to give you an example, the technology that we imported from the West, I mean, the Greenland, Iceland, UK belt, I mean, when in the Navy also we procured ships, we checked it there. It gave you 32 nautical miles there. The ship sails from there and comes to India, we get 5 nautical miles. That is the degradation of performance that we are talking about, 70% degradation. Now, my point is, from a strategic perspective, this 5 can become 10. Our asset deployment becomes half. And if we can deny this to our adversary, we get a 4-time advantage. But it requires, I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, people have done it. So we just need a focus. But the problem is, in a democracy, like what I said, can the defense budget fund the capacity building? It cannot happen. It has to be a whole of nation approach. And if everybody puts in a smaller pie, I think the amount of money that will be available for research will be significant. So with that whole, I mean, the capacity building has to be done in a very different way. And we reached out to the Niti Aayog, and that's what I mentioned. Avinash sir is here today. And we requested that, we need to take it up in a whole of nation approach. And thanks to them, we have submitted the interim report, and they are evaluating it. And they have also sent that to different ministries for their comments. And hopefully we'll be moving to the next level. And I mean, having a national capacity building policy, I think, is a very, very important area. And even otherwise, if you look at this cube, I mean, when we look at the vertical construct, a lot of sensing is required, a lot of data analysis is required, and then we look at the regulatory or the policy framework. And this also addresses, there are so many areas which are not yet being addressed by the policy makers. So this actually can be an all-encompassing, framework where we can take it forward. Even for the youngsters, the smaller cubes within the bigger cube actually represents those smaller projects that they can do and become part of it. And they can connect to a stakeholder that, see, I'm doing this, and the stakeholder will be happy to. I mean, many of our students have now got connected very well, and they have moved to a very important positions. I mean, recently one of our students got selected in Carnegie Mellon for a postgraduate. So we are happy to see our young students doing. I mean, they are, as it is, very bright students, but they're reaching to the next level is so heartening for us. So this actually addresses, even when we have the fragmented approach, many of our research institutes are doing overlapping work. So the government actually can regulate that, no, this much is done, and these are the new priorities. Any new researcher should be working on these areas, and this is where the government would like to support. So this framework can address a whole lot of issues in terms of policy intervention, technology intervention, and also capacity building. I mean, what kind of training is required, what kind of skilling is required, all that can be addressed. I mean, I can go on and on with this one slide, but I think we'll move to the next level. Next, please. So we've been doing a lot of these sensitization, where we've been conducting this summer school. This is a 6 weeks residential program that we do, 4 weeks in Mumbai University and 2 weeks in Goa. They get exposure to various aspects, various career opportunities, and every individual does a project when they are with us for the 6 weeks. And it's a very good peer learning format, because along with young students, young faculty, we've had officers from Coast Guard, Navy, DRDO, shipyards, they've all come together. They spend 6 weeks together. And actually, our interactions sometimes have gone up to even 12 o'clock in the night, because the accommodation is right there. I mean, thanks to Bombay University, and even we have done one around with Pune University. It's all co-located, so people have actually continued with their interaction during dinner and beyond. So that's a satisfaction we've had. And you can see we've had the resource person who come, they are the top of the line. I mean, there is Admiral Karve, you can see, who retired as a CNC. Even ADG Safikar was there. So from all walks of, next please. We can see Vice Chancellor of Mumbai University, and a whole lot of people. I mean, I think I'll not go around naming. Even people from think tank have come, former Naval Chief, Director of NIO. Then we also do this as part of that, one weekend we get in Goa, we do a beach walk, which is led by Dr. Prasanna Kumar, former Director of NIO. He's a physical oceanographer and also accompanied by a marine biologist. So for morning 8 to evening 8 o'clock or evening 7 o'clock, they go to 4 different beaches in Goa, and they explain to all those participants on various aspects of oceanography and ecosystem management. Next, please. Then we've also been doing a lot of training programs and field. So in Khadakwasla, we hired 4 different types of sonars, and also we got a lot of support from National Defence Academy. Next, please. So you can see this was also part of the PhD work of one of my students, but it was converted like a 5-day workshop where we had about 30-40 participants, and you can see the sonars being deployed, and we did a full survey of the Khadakwasla Lake, which is a 500 square kilometer big lake in Pune. Next. So you can see all these pictures where the data was collected, and next please. Yeah. So even we did coring, sample taking and all that. Yeah. So potential areas of joint work across sectors: water resource management, water quality management, sediment management, enhanced livelihood for communities, sustainable blue economy, underwater archaeology, and revival of traditional knowledge across regions. Next, please. Potential gap. I mean, the tropical challenges, as I mentioned, I think the import of technology or import of know-how has not helped us. We've had a Nordic summit recently. The second Nordic summit happened. They're too happy to sell their heavy engineering to us, but does that give a solution to our problem is a question that we need to really answer. So, and I think at the multiple levels, I think there is a gap in appreciation. So we have reached out to the Capacity Building Commission, and the Secretary has been extremely kind, and I think we will get an opportunity to have a very structured interaction with, because he feels that even the policymakers, the domain understanding will help them in coming out with better policy. Lack of indigenous effort. I mean, we have been importing, but there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, I think fragmented approach is well understood. Next, please. These are well understood, but how do we address it? I mean, this is just an example to address one of the issues, like underwater radiated noise. Now, there is a requirement for the Navy. There is a requirement for the environmental conservation people, ship designers and shipbuilders. India wants to become one of the major shipbuilding nations, but we really do not have many of, I mean, now slowly for the shipbuilders, the radiated noise has become a contractual obligation, but still it is not being implemented properly. So we need to really address this in a very, very nuanced manner. And you can see, this whole one particular initiative, I mean, the whole, everybody can contribute, pooling of resources and synergizing of effort is so very important. And you can really come up with innovative policy, technology. So the bigger UDA framework, I have now broken it down into various smaller things, and they can be driven more focused. And in fact, even what the report I submitted to the Niti Aayog, I had this dilemma of consolidation versus diversity. I mean, if you look at India itself, I mean, I come from the Northeast. People who have not been there, they will not understand what Brahmaputra is. Brahmaputra, there are places where the width of Brahmaputra is 10 kilometers. Right? I mean, if you have not been there, you don't know what is Brahmaputra. So if somebody sitting here tries to do policy for Brahmaputra, I think we will do gross injustice, and that is what has happened. Now, so, I mean, we have reached out to the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Education on setting up an inter-university center. I mean, I was initially very, very I mean, Prafulji and me were very, very excited that we should pitch for an inter-university center because there is already a framework. But when I was doing this report, thanks to Niti Aayog, I realized that, consolidation is very good because, you have so much resources available. But how do we address the requirement of the diversity that is, so I have proposed a center of excellence, one for underwater archaeology, one for inland water transport, one for strategic security, one for sustainable blue economy, one for communities. How do you address it, for the coastal community? So that, so I have left it to the decision makers, how will you answer this question of consolidation versus diversity? Because if you put one center, it will flatten everything, and I think we'll go horribly wrong. So that is, from my side, I've given both sides of the argument, and I've left it in the report, and people will decide, at the higher level. But next, please. So similar thing I've done, just to make it look different, I've inverted it. But you see, even sediment management, whether it is your Sagar Mala, there's so much of allocation, but we're still looking at the West to give a solution. Inland water transport, water resource management, there are a whole lot of issues. There is already so much money available, but we are still looking at the West for solutions. Unless we put our minds, unless we, of course, we will take help from others to accelerate, but it can't be completely driven by them. That's what we need to address. Next, please. So we can just go on. So many of them can be brought in. And this is just to show you, even every quarter, you can see so much changes, in the underwater conditions. Next, please. Just to, we've done an entire 3D mapping. So we've developed all these tools, and all are in a very, very mature state, can be straight away implemented. Next, please. So this is one of the, go back, please. This was one of the key work that we did. The automated identification system, which is supported by the IMO also, is a system which gives you the complete details of shipping traffic. We have used that data that is available online, updated every 6 minutes. So we have taken that data, converted it into underwater noise, and then passed it through the underwater channel, and you get a complete sense of underwater, low frequency underwater noise. This impacts marine mammal stranding. You can see why so much stranding is happening on our west coast. So this is what won that innovation challenge in France. And now IMO has taken a note of this, and probably we get an opportunity to make this and implement this for policy making. So these are some of those tools that can be used. And a similar concept we have done for shrimp farming. All the digital data can be taken, and we can actually give what are the best sites. And if you have already done this, how will you manage it operationally? What kind of intervention needs to be done? How will you predict disease, and how will you intervene? All that can be done. So the seaweed thing is, I started with shrimp farming, but I didn't get support for that. But the next version got more support. And at least now all my versions are getting funded by that. But whatever it is, these are very important. And I think it can be implemented, and it will do a lot of good. And this brings, because of that transparency, financial institutions will come down to support the smaller communities. Because so much more certainty will come into their practices. Next, please. So my proposal is, how to take it forward is outreach, engage, sustain. Outreach is doing such small seminars, webinars, where we sensitize the senior policymakers, stakeholders, even communities, students, to kind of understand the importance and kind of appreciate. The second is engage. And engage has to be at multiple levels. Young students, so I'm requesting, we already started this fellowship programs. Young students can come and intern, move on to the next level of getting supported as a fellow and contribute. And then they get, they graduate to the next level of taking it as a career opportunity. Also connecting with the industry, to engage with the industry, to specifically address their specific requirements, engaging with the policymakers. And then in the sustained, how do we build projects which are long-term and they contribute on the ground? And I'm proposing setting up a center of excellence. Can you move to the next one? And I think it is very much aligned with the new education policy that we have in India. 5 sub-centers as under the same umbrella: a multidisciplinary research center, an incubation center, a skilling center, academic center, and strategy center. Today, I think in the last 3-4 years, whatever we have done, I can tell you that all the 5 centers are functioning in MRC. We are an extremely small team, And we have been working last 2 years, we've been working online, but I can give you enough. If you go to our website, you'll get enough body of work in each of these. I mean, we have contributed as a strategy center, we have reached out to the highest policy making institute in the country, Niti Aayog. We've reached out to the National Security Advisor. We are working at the services level. We're working at multiple levels, and we've been getting very good support from everybody. We've already got academic programs which have been approved. We have been running many of them. Skilling programs already approved. Now we have just now got support from 5 Swiss companies. As soon as I go back, we start work on that in setting up a center of excellence for skilling. As I said, there are more than 50 incubation ideas which are ready for implementation. Next, please. I've had 4 PhD students who have finished their PhD under me, so I can also claim that we've done a research center. There's a naval captain, serving naval captain. One is a very senior corporate who's done his PhD with me, and 2 faculty members. This is a framework that is more suited to the Indian scenario, but I think this can be replicated for across. If you look at the funnel, on one side are the core requirements of UDA, whether it is underwater robotics, signal processing, modeling and simulation, data science. On the other side, these are the schemes of the government which can actually be used to further this. Like Make in India is a very good initiative. Skill India, Startup India, Digital India. I mean, no more new instruments are required. There are already enough instruments. So when I reach out to the policymaker, I'm just trying to request them, sir, everything is there. You just need to give a focus on this. And what it can solve is policy, technology, and capacity building. And look at how many stakeholders can benefit out of it. And these are mega projects. I mean, right from Gati Shakti to Sagarmala to a whole lot of initiatives can be supported, which already have huge amount of funding. Next, please. Way ahead, last 2 slides, multi-level capacity and capability building initiative jointly across the tropical waters. So, I mean, not just in India, since I'm in UNESCO office, I think we can make it a regional approach. High priority for science and technology and traditional knowledge, focus on local site-specific R&D, and consolidation across the region. Next. How we are going to do it is the same outreach, engage, sustain initiative, setting up of center of excellence. We have senior diplomats also. I think with a little support from the Ministry of External Affairs, we can reach out. And already there are forums which are now being supported by India. I mean, the BIMSTEC Secretariat, I think the heavy lifting is being done by India. So even for a BIMSTEC, I mean, 25% of the global population resides in the BIMSTEC country. So there's so much more we can do. And I think at some point we should think of setting up a center of excellence, even at a regional level, rather than just doing it. I mean, I think India is definitely under the Sagar vision. There is so much that we can do. And UDA Summer School, I think, can just be started. I mean, we have done 4 versions all by ourselves. And with a little support, I think we can do much more. And of course, we should do more field work. And the whole UDA framework for Digital Ocean, I think, requires significant support from a very, very esteemed panel here. Next. Thank you. Thank you for your patient hearing. I would now I'd request Avinash sir to kindly say a few words.
Mr. Benu Johar, Shikhar Dabji, Dr. Arnab Das, Dr. Mudgal, Pandey ji, Saigal ji, Mr. Talera and Mr. Murli and Mr. Parashraman, and all the other dignified audience, those are here in this and those are virtually connected. Since this happens to be a new area which needs to be explored further for economic development, I am of the view that to call it planet Earth is justified, or to call it planet Ocean, because it is rather more planet Ocean. Of course, India has already submitted its claim to the United Nations Convention of Law of Sea that our area is not 2.27, rather it is 3.2 million square kilometer. I think as the population is growing, what Dr. Beno has indicated, that we are likely to touch the number 108. Considering that, I am of the view that we should really search, intensively see what are the other economic benefits, those are to be derived. As far as the sustainable development goals are concerned, it has already been indicated SDG 4, and all the signatory countries have already pledged this. I am of the view that for Indian subcontinent, it is very essential to know how much is the temperature, water temperature rise is happening in the ocean. We have experienced that even on an average, 1 degree temperature rise has reduced the rainfall to the tune of 1.7 centimeter, and it has impacted 25 to 30 billion cubic meter of less water availability in the country, which is sufficient to feed around 600 million population in this country. So we are definitely going to take an impact which one should see. We have got a largest coastline, that is 7,500 kilometer, and there are many unexplored areas like seaweed, shrimps. They are the newer area where we need to work and we need to explore. There is a definitely rare earths, natural minerals, those are available in deep sea. Whether to have the exclusive economic zone up to 200 nautical miles and then to further grow. It is not only confined with the strategic importance, but many other activities are there. Actually, the sustainable blue development and to support blue economy, it is very essential to know what type of habitat is required for one type of a species to grow, to multiply, and then further to extract it sustainably. That is the real way we can thrive on and the economy can develop. Definitely, I can't say for other countries, but I know from my neighbors, whether the Sri Lanka and all, those are there. They are like us only, not much explored in the ocean region. We need to really see it. The other important aspect which will come, the pollution, is international route which really passes through us. In what way the pollution is coming out, and what should be the minimum level of that pollution, what is the permissible level of that pollution. This is all very important. Keeping this in view, the economic impact, the way we can really explore the sustainable economic importance of the ocean. The Niti Aayog thought that we should really go ahead for the development framework on this marine, and in what way it should be. Since the report which we got it done with the help of Dr. Arnab Das, it is long back submitted to us. A consultation process is going on with the Ministry of Earth Science and other scientific ministries in what way we can go ahead with this. There are many schemes, the flow of funds, the stream of funds which is already available. With the convergence of that, we can explore. Definitely, we are not that scientifically equipped to understand what should be the way to desilt the rivers, and then not only desilting the river, but aggregation of the river which is taking place, and the silt or sand which is otherwise being imported in India from other countries can be harnessed here itself. Subsequently, there are many other activities. Those are dependent on the marine research, the further research in this direction. As Dr. Arnab Das has already indicated, there are 50 startups, those are in line. I believe that it is a new economic area to be explored further. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Navigation, use of water, use of right of the way, in preventing pollution. When pollution happens, fixing not only the responsibility, but also very fast and rapid, say, remedial measures. Even very responsible companies have let enormous amount of oil spill, and they've got away with it. And there's no international kind of banning or destroying those companies. Actually, some of the companies should have been destroyed completely with lawful manner. They should have been fined so heavily that they cannot work. All their properties should have been. We have seen now, or they call it effective, but how wide-ranging sanctions are. Why can't a big company which has let a huge amount of oil spill be sanctioned in a way that it is destroyed, and their people don't use the normal good things of the world? Anyway, my point is that we are irresponsibly handling the seas, and we have to do it. Security is a part of that. In fact, long ago, one of the naval officers with almost the same background as Arnab, and was a good friend of mine, is called Commodore Arugya Swami Paul Raj, and I was director Navy. I'm talking of early 1980s. I was handling Navy, I was handling missile systems, I was handling shipbuilding and everything. And so on one end was Dr. Kalam and the missile systems. The other end was Navy and shipbuilding. And as a director Navy, I was coordinating all these things in the Ministry of Defense in the early 1980s. And Dr. Paul Raj, he started this Sonar. So he designed certain things. He validated in IIT Delhi. He did a MTech, and then he was taken into DRDO in the National Oceanographic scene and making all the NPOL sonars. Then he went into Bharat Electronics, and I was in the board of Bharat Electronics, looking after Bharat Electronics. A lot of things we came to know when Sonar was sort of deployed, and studies happened after seeing the reports. One clear thing was that tropical water is quite different than the temperate water. Most of the ships everywhere are made in the temperate water, and they sail and gradually and quickly they sail into the Indian Ocean because of the same reason that oil and a lot of economic traffic goes on from Far East to through Malacca Strait to the Gulf countries. The material which is used for making ship hulls is such that there's a deterioration. And you talked about the material. Material is very, very important because then, depending upon the material, the economics of the ship actually is. And there's a lot of deterioration, a lot of things happening, and we can actually make out. It's almost like differentiating Arnab and Shekhar Dutt or any other person, not seeing, but by the sonar signature. And they're good naval personnel who can sit in front of the sonar and say, oh, this is this ship, this is this ship, because of the acoustic signature. These acoustic signatures are different, and they confuse also the underwater life. Now, again, one more thing which I would like to emphasize is that, really speaking, there is no underwater. what you see is land at different surfaces. Basically, you're seeing sea. From the coastline, you're seeing the seabed, and then you go deep into the Indian Ocean has got a lot of regions. Actually, if you do that, a survey of different depths. I'm also a chief mentor of the Indian Space Association. So we are talking about how to make the space use all the surfaces of the earth and all that. Far more exploration is possible of the underwater domain, of the land beyond the land, the countries and the islands, because we are talking of 21st century. The earth, the inhabitants of the earth have to go on, say 26, 27 or more centuries. But do we have the resources in the land which can look after all these people? We don't. The rapid way, and one of the biggest sort of resource which is shrinking is water. Water is one of the biggest resource which is shrinking so heavily that, like said, that for every 1 centimeter, one degree Celsius, it is
25 to 30 BCM decrease of the,
yes,
which is available.
So I mean, I am because of being associated with defense a long time, I've been flying all over India and wherever I go on low-flying aircrafts, helicopters, and I have seen a transition from green to light green to brown to light brown that is India. So over a period of land, say photography, if you do that, you find the difference in the color of India, color of the Indian soil.
Different time zones.
And the geohydrological experts would actually come out, and this is disastrous, absolutely, seeing that if you put, it'll make people feel that, oh, what will my grandchild do? Because the earth, bulk of the earth, in fact, where we are sitting over here, not very far away from a place called Dwarka or a place called Vasant Kunj, there's very, very little water under. Maybe there are some pockets of where you can, but hand pumps cannot be used. So what are we doing? Now, if you study the rainfall has been, if not, our Met fellows will say, in order to give a good sort of a take home, they'll say, oh, rainfall is adequate so far, rainfall is slightly less. Why? Because bulk of the rainfall comes only in patches and at times in a few days. We've had situation in Bombay, and I was defense secretary at that time. For the next 15 days, we had to manage the evacuation of people and equipment and other things from Bombay because there was a say overload of water which had dropped in one day. We cannot stop that water and allow that water to go under the ground, and we have to do it. There is no way. In fact, there should be both pecuniary and punishment, say severe punishment to people who let the water go. Inland waterways, extremely important for every transportation, because it is common sense that water transportation is far lesser resistance than land transportation. And in land transportation, we are using say oil and petroleum. But we don't have adequate water. The siltation that you said, siltation of the rivers, siltation of the dams, everything is a small little science outcome and they can do it, it is called civil engineering. Institutes after institutes I've gone and I have lectured when or discussed, and their chancellors say that's we are thinking of stopping civil engineering because parents don't like to have their children go into civil engineering. They want to computers and software engineering and all that. Everything is written with okay. Change the subject. Don't call it civil engineering, but mix civil engineering with other things. But we have to desilt all our water bodies. We have to have drains. What are rivers? Rivers are essentially drains because they drain out the land, the water spill which happens. I mean, it's a shame that Rajasthan or Gujarat has paucity of water, but whenever there's some extra 15 centimeters of rainfall,
They don't know
they are flooded. Today, Pakistan is underground and underwater. And so many things, So basically because they have not seen the proper drainage. So drainage has to be done and the flow of water has to be stopped or slowed, so that by the time the river comes out and meets the ocean or the sea, there's very little addition. Sea will continue to get water because there's a lot of seepage under the soil, and sea would continue to have water. Now sea also we have mercilessly destroyed because of the what was mentioned right in the beginning by Dr. Boer, the amount of plastics and amount of pollution which we do, and with that the amount of pollution of the seas, unfortunately, sea capability of looking after the interest of the land is reducing. So we have to do, and there should be a system by which there could be countries or people could be told that all right, this is the consequence and this will be a collective punishment. Crime cannot be controlled without adequate measures of punishment. So we have to do that. Now, for India specifically, because we got 7,500 kilometers of coastline, Navy has to play a big role in this because the seafarers are primarily Navy and Merchant Navy. Now, how many marinas are there in different kind of different seaports or population centers on the coast? Unfortunately, there are not many. Even in Bombay, the marina is not something to write home about. What is a marina? The people who go into the sea, people who feel very strongly about keeping the sea alive. In fact, we have to have huge numbers of people who would be interested to see our seas properly and proper. And it is not necessarily what's the name of the former naval chief who was based in the western coast, who is mobilizer of public opinion.
Admiral
Ramdas. Now, there are more people in India who don't like Admiral Ramdas than the ones who like. And what is Admiral Ramdas saying? There's something good to keep the sea or the maritime proper. I mean, we should not belittle his thing. But what I'm saying is, you don't require only a few persons. You require a mass which looks after this thing. The marine life, what we actually exploit, we have to grow And despite the rise in population of the world, we should be able to garner some part, some portion. It may be 10%, 15%, 20%, but still the marine life has to grow. Otherwise, we are making our... Now, one aspect which is forgotten is that marine life is not just animals, it is also flora. And some of the flora is far, far more useful. Say, for example, some of the seaweeds. In a particular case, they in a heart operation, they found that a lot of people in USA died because of the resistance of the body to blood thinning. And that was, and the blood thinners are basically derived out of human or animal, intestines. And then all those thinners are made. There was some kind of a contamination and this happened and some people died. So an Australian and a New Zealand university helped with the Japanese, and an Australian university found the use of seaweed, and they created this blood thinner out of seaweed. Now, why I'm saying it, that there's enormous amount of vegetation and flora in the sea, and basically in the underwater domain. Now, they are extremely good source of not only food, but also of health. And we have to do it. So world has to actually depend more and more on the underwater domain as time goes by. And so we have to be kind to the sea. And there is no... So therefore, how do we do? When I was governor, I said that, all right, I want people to say that they are somewhat thankful to the sea. So I took an EDC from the Navy. Immediately from the Navy itself, they said, no, Chhattisgarh doesn't have any sea border. So why should you take? I said, no, I was Director Navy and I was Joint Secretary dealing with this thing, Defense Production Secretary. Everywhere I have used very close this thing with the Navy. So I want, but more than that. And we've had also 2 naval chiefs who were from Rajasthan. People have to be aware. People have to be aware of the ship. They have to see the naval officer, and they have to understand. It's not that the states are not, which don't have a coastline, are not using the sea. They are using water. Heavy dependence on water. So if you are using water, you have to be ultimately also kind to the sea. And the huge aspects of economics, aspects of ecology are all interconnected with security. So you cannot just say security in isolation and forget about the ecology, forget about the economy. Our dependence, especially in India, on the sea traffic is enormous. More than 95% of all our imports and maybe 98% of the export happens in bulk, not in value terms, happens through the sea. We don't have one single place where we can manufacture large bulk carriers. Okay, I have been chairman of Goa Shipyard. I have also looked after the defense shipyard, but defense shipyards are all 5, 6, 7,000 say tons of weight, bulk. But 100,000, containers, huge amount of containers, and all our containers would require. Now we are talking about energy shortage, and we have to have an energy security. Are we planning to have energy security? We'll be now taking help of hydrogen, liquid ammonia, and all that. Now, bulk of this will be exported, And we have seen what is happening in Ukraine. So there will be a demand from the places which will be short of this thing. How do you export? How do you move liquid ammonia, liquid hydrogen, bulk, this thing containers? Where are they? How are the ships going to come? If the ships do come, you have to take the containers on barges and unload it at, say, Colombo or beyond Navi Mumbai, like that. So we have to sort of have in draft, good amount of draft along the coastline. So what I'm saying is we have to manage, we have to bring it back into the ship, say, till the time, say, 200 years ago, what had happened. And an enormous amount of exercise is required. We have to be very, very responsibly sort of doing it. We have to do a lot of survey, and then also this exploitation of the seabed, which means a lot of survey of minerals which are within the seabed. And as things go down, I mean, in the deeper seas, to see what kind of thing. It's very good to know Mars and know Moon, but far much more minerals can be exploited, extracted from the seabed. But we have to know where and what quantities we have to do. So my ultimate thing is that yes, it's a very good exercise that you are doing, but all dimensions have to be seen at different levels, and you have to create a very large numbers of people who are kind towards the seas. It starts with the land itself, the kind towards the water bodies. And if you are kind towards the water bodies, you'd see that you are instrumental in keeping the draft. I mean, India's inland shipping, inland waterways related transportation takes less than 1% of our industrial production. There's hardly anything. And we've got very large number of rivers. In the early 90s, we will do a lot, so a little more from Haldia to Banaras and Banaras to Allahabad in the Ganges was done. And that's all. So hardly anything comes into the inland of India through the inland waterways. So it has to be, but we have to actually see the inland waterways are navigable. And they're only possibly navigable will be, we have to have enough draft. In fact, when I was chairman of the Goa Shipyard, I was also director, also joint secretary of the Ministry of Defense looking after the shipping and shipbuildings. So I said, Goa Shipyard's very lean and thin and extremely profitable. So we can give something to Goa also. And that is, we can make, we made a ship which incidentally was going to Mauritius, offshore petrol vessel.
Barracuda.
Yeah. And big advertisement in the Times of India came. And they said that Goa has the largest, always, I mean, Goa, Murgaon port has the largest bulk going out of India all the time. Why? Because a lot of iron ore and all these things go. So I said, how does it go? They said, Murgaon, it gets loaded into barges and it goes into the sea and then it is transported into a bulk carrier. I said, what does happen? What does the barge do after that? He said, no, barge comes back. I said, with what? He said, no, it's only to carry the bulk from Murgaon to the bulk carrier. I said, but we've got such a large amount of import. What does happen? They said, we don't do that. At the same time, the coastal railway was being made, Sridharan, one of India's biggest aces in project management. He was doing that, what is it, like
Konkan Railways.
Huh?
Konkan Railways.
Konkan Railways. So I said, I'll ask Sridharan just a little bit and deviation to Goa, and at 2 or 3 or 4 places we will have berths for loading. There was an uproar over there from Goa itself that we don't want too much of work. We like our siesta in the afternoon. So, these are the kind of complications. We are not achieving our optimum exploitation of the natural resources, and we have to do that. So there's enormous work for everyone, every one of your talented, research scholars and all that, because I think the world of maritime domain is huge, and it will help our generations, for our generations to come. So thank you very much for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I request Pandey sir to.
Thank you so much, Arnav, for inviting, and I'm grateful to Mudgal sir for exposing me to this underwater domain awareness. I have very quick 3 points to make. One is all about Indian ocean and how does it really signify not only the economic interest, but also a lot of climate change being undertaken by companies without caring for them. And the third one would be as to how could your center try and intervene and make some tangible difference in the ground, which is both in terms of research and centers that you have, but also how do you really bring on board some very tangible partnerships which could probably deliver not only the value, but also create very robust measurements and metrics. So first thing first, I cannot really overstate the significance of Indian Ocean region and the lateral states. I mean, they are very, very important, and they're very, very important from every perspective. If we were to really look at security, or maritime, or navigation, or the movement of the ship, kind of pollution they create, and what really happens in the process when ships move in ways that they cannot really care for marine life and other flora and fauna. So they are really trying to create more damage than bringing more economic interest on the table. And therefore, I would really like to say that while we are talking about domain awareness, it is all about underwater assets. And unless and until we can quantify the kind of value that we can put on these assets, as you rightly said, sir, it is not only marine life, but also flora and fauna. And they could not only help us with regard to the food, fishing and non-fishing, but also in terms of these seaweeds, which could be very innovatively get deployed in health and medicinal production of pharmaceuticals and therapeutics. So it will be very, very helpful to probably see as to how do we really try and identify the assets which are within the sea at various levels, and how could we really try and put some value. So economic value on these natural resources would be very, very helpful. So that is the first thing which I would really like to put on board. The second thing is that, sir rightly said, how do we really govern the sea, which will mean if there is an oil spill, how do you really penalize people? If there is a company which is trying to explore natural resources in a way that they don't really care about anything, so they're killing more, underwater, flora and fauna and the ocean life, how do you really try and build the systems which would really go on to govern the sea and how people are really dealing with the sea. So that is something which is very, very important. Third thing, Sir also rightly said, how do you really look at the sea from the intersection of climate, economic value that it creates, and also the geopolitics? And I was talking to some people of late in Taipei, and they said that, look, we cannot really win a conventional war with Chinese, but we have the strait, and we will try and weaponize the state and make life miserable for the Chinese to be able to take over us anytime soon. So I would really try to put it in a way that how do we really find the value, which is economic value, and put that value on the asset which the sea has, which is very, very important. The second part is that climate issues are now getting more significance for the right reasons. So how do we really try and see to it that we have robust data which could be plotted to build better measurements and metrics, and based on which we could probably try and take better and more informed policy decisions. The third one is geopolitics. How will oceans and straits tomorrow will act as a robust deterrence in security terms? And now we have Chinese spy ships docked in Sri Lanka. So they're not only docking and enjoying their life on the sea, they're trying to capture data in every possible way, satellite, below the ocean. They're trying to map things whereby they could probably see in which ways they could probably control the straits and the sea route, and try and see to it as to how could they really use oceanographic data for navigation purposes. So we have to really be very, very careful in terms of putting value, identifying assets, linking it to climate change, and also seeing to it as to how could powers in the region try and probably use our ocean assets to create a deterrence in times of crisis. Now, moving forward pretty quickly, what I would probably suggest you to consider could be the following three quick things. One, it'll be a very, very important thing to build partnerships, because one person, one institution will not be able to do, such a big task that you have taken upon yourself. And immediately, which is of course on the table, and Sir knows about it better than me, we are going to have G20, and India is the president for G20. And within the G20, we have T20. And I had the privilege of steering T20 in Berlin in 2017. And I know how the process works, and that's a pretty prestigious process. And it would be a very good idea to sort of enter this kind of a domain, which is multinational, multilateral, and also combines this T20, which is non-governmental aspect to G20. So you are then interfacing not only with think tanks, NGOs, but you're also interfacing at the same time with the government. So that is the part one. Part two, to me, looks that working with company will be very, very, because I know for sure that there are a couple of countries in the West and Europe that have been trying to work on the framework on ocean, framework on ocean governance, framework on how do you really put value on the asset with the ocean hand. And then you will sort of get in a really easy way to prove the value that you want to really produce. And everything has to be in terms of metrics and measurement. Otherwise, nobody will really care about it. And the third part is media also plays an important role. And therefore, how do we bring media on board Not that they have got to talk about some sleazy things here and there, but how do they really put ideas and issues into context? And then try and build national safety and security, regional stability. What happens if oceans are dead? We will all die. What happens to the communities which are living by the coastline? How do you really build the capacity of the people who are closer to ocean than those of us living far away from it? And finally, how do we really build the collective? And that collective could probably going on not only to intervene in the policy making, but also create some labs, for example. Like Accenture in Mumbai has created a 3D lab, and they call people in and show them what 3D could really do. So I think these could be some of the things which you may consider, but I think what you have been doing is very, very important. And I learned so much, and I will be very happy to contribute to your efforts and whatever you have been doing in ways that would be fundamental to change things the way they exist on the ground. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate your comments, and they were extremely to the point, and I think that really help us taking this forward. Thank you very much. Now I request Arugam Parshuraman sir to say give his comments.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arnab. Respected Governor of Chhattisgarh, Mr. Sekhar Dutt, my colleague Beno Boya, Chief Natural Sciences, Natural Sciences, UNESCO Delhi, respected Anu Mudge, and all the distinguished participants and panelists present today. I must first of all thank Arnab for taking this forward. I remember very well a meeting with Excellency Anu, where he introduced me Arnab, and he presented the project to me at that time. And I must say, as a UNESCO staff, and having worked with UNESCO for more than 30 years, I could immediately see the potential that the collaboration with UNESCO can bring to your vision, to your great initiative. I must say it's a very unique initiative what you've taken. And therefore, I felt it was natural for me, having been myself director of this office from 2009, 2011, and knowing UNESCO from headquarters also. I know this is something that, by collaborating with UNESCO, you could take it forward. And I must say it's very rare for UN agencies. I sent a message in that connection to the director, my good friend Eric Falk, on a Sunday. And I got the reply on the same Sunday, where Eric Falk directed a message to Boya, asked him to take it forward. That's a sort of spirit which I think was really great, and I was very, very happy and touched by that, because to respond so spontaneously and so quickly to the message I sent on a Sunday is really exceptional. And I must thank my friend Boya, who took it so seriously. I can feel that he has a lot of he's very committed to it. It comes from his heart, right? The way he took that, and he was not yet based in Delhi because of family reason. He was in Bangkok, I think, no? He was there, but working from there, serving Delhi, and he took up the matter. And here we are today at this conference, and it's a major breakthrough for you, Arnab. I think this will greatly help to take it forward the way you wanted it. And I must say I must say that I'm very pleased to be associated with my colleague and good friend Eric Falk, the director of UNESCO New Delhi. Unfortunately, as he mentioned to me today, he'll be leaving Delhi for some other place. But I think he's done 4.5 years here. Done a wonderful job. I must pay tribute to him, because when I look at what he has achieved over this period, in the director of UNESCO New Delhi office is significant, right? It has laid the foundation of a number of very interesting initiatives because it's very open-minded and is very also quick to grasp the key issues that we need to take forward in the service to our member states. And so therefore, I'm very happy and I have great hope that your vision of taking this forward in the best interest, not only of the region, but also globally, has great potential because of this willingness, this collaboration, and this support that you are getting from UNESCO. And when we met the director this morning, you know, although he will not be here himself as from September, but sorry, it's not fun. Oh, I'm sorry. So that we got silent. He very much endorsed what we're doing today and gave his full support to Boer. And he was looking forward to the outcome of this meeting. And you agreed to submit to him, the brief outcome together with Boer. And he will certainly give his support to that. And I'm sure that his successor, I don't know who is the successor yet, but a new one will be joining us from 1st of October. I'm confident that they will follow that because this is UNESCO in terms of the service that they want to offer. It's not an organization which provides a lot of money, but it's an organization which has the capacity to convene and get people together in achieving great objectives that we have under our mandate. And that, I think, is the advantage of collaboration with UNESCO. Well, let me also salute the presence of somebody whom I have great respect and who was a very, I must say, very, very well respected and regarded ambassador to Mauritius. My friend Anu Mudge is really did a wonderful job there, and people still talk of him because he was an ambassador who could meet anybody, you know. You want to see him, you go and meet him, meet people, he goes around, and people still remember it. But you have left also very, very good landmark in Mauritius. And I was pleased on what Anu mentioned about the Sagar vision. And that is something which, and I know even after retirement, you are doing a lot of fantastic work. And most interestingly, for the purpose of our discussion here, I think I've not seen somebody who is so committed to blue economy. He's really an international expert in that field, conducting many conferences and giving very, very sound guidance and advice in this area. And this is the area of the future, especially for many developing countries. And so I'm very happy that he initiated that and we have been able to reach this. Well, let me give some thought to the substance of this conference by saying that, as we know, in recent years, underwater cultural heritage has attracted increasing attention from both the scientific community and the general public. For scientists, it represents an invaluable source of information on ancient civilizations, maritime practices, human use of land and marine environments, and and climate change. For the general public, it offers an opportunity to understand its history, to pass on the memory of it to future generations, to strengthen the sense of community, and to develop a sustainable tourism economy. UNESCO has developed awareness-raising activities targeting all these stakeholders, members of the scientific community, heritage managers, the general public, and local communities. Furthermore, the Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage encourages responsible public access to underwater cultural heritage sites. Covering over 2/3 of our blue planet, the ocean makes it habitable. It is at the origin of all life on Earth. And I think, Excellency, the former governor, did emphasize that very much and in a very enlightening manner. And it's at the origin of all life on Earth and affects each of our lives. It is the source of our fresh water and of half the oxygen we breathe. It also influences our climate and weather. Our ocean provides food, medicine, and mineral and energy resources. It supports a multitude of life forms and shapes the Earth's characteristics. With reference to Mauritius and Africa, I must say that the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, IOC UNESCO, is working to improve responses to the unprecedented environmental changes and human impacts now occurring, and to promote ocean health via marine sciences. I am pleased that much regard is given to Africa, and I'm glad that our young leaders from Africa are present here today. And much regard is given to Africa, as well as small island developing states like my own country, Mauritius, where livelihoods depend heavily on marine resources. The blue economy represents over 10.5% of the national GDP of Mauritius, with total direct employment estimated at over 20,000, excluding coastal tourism. Tapping into the economic potential of the ocean, while at the same time protecting this resource, requires thoughtful policy, planning, and management. With this in mind, Mauritius decided to make the blue economy a pillar of its economic development strategy, with an objective to double the contribution of the blue economy to GDP by 2025. It created an oceans economy roadmap, which aims to make use of the untapped value of the country's ocean resources by sustainably coordinating the use of resources. The country endowed a new ministry for blue economy, marine resources, fisheries, and shipping with the authority to coordinate and manage ocean-related activities. And I must say that Mauritius is thankful to India for all the support, technical support given for us to develop our program. But I believe personally that we need to do more, and more urgently also, because the potential is there, and we are not advancing as fast as we could. And this is where my advice to the government of Mauritius is they should really work harder on that and get full technical support from wherever we can. India in particular being a country where we have very close relationship, but also with UNESCO and all the UN agencies. They're all there to support. And I believe for Mauritius in this current economic challenge that we are facing, that will be the future. Well, marine ecosystem-based management requires a new generation of spatial planning tools to empower marine managers to implement best policies. IOC UNESCO promotes marine spatial planning, a practical way to create and establish a more rational organization of the use of marine space and the interaction between users, to balance demands for development with the need to protect marine ecosystems and to achieve social and economic objectives in an open and planned manner. Well, the Maritime Research Centre, MRC Pune, is being led. I'm very happy to say that, and also honored to be associated with you, Dr. Anu. This MRC is being led by a very dynamic young leader with high level of domain expertise. We have seen that in his presentation. And the Underwater Domain Awareness UDA framework being driven by the MRC is very relevant to the UNESCO mandate, and the two organizations working together will be a very positive start. And the technology tools developed by MRC will bring significant transparency to the interactions with the water bodies, both in the marine as well as the freshwater systems. The island nations in the Indo-Pacific will significantly benefit from such a collaboration. The post-pandemic global order has been extremely challenging, and optimum resource management will be the key to survival. The coastal communities need a lot of support from organizations like the MRC. UNESCO backing the MRC will make sure the public good is delivered to these communities. And I'm sure this collaboration between MRC and UNESCO will certainly bring a lot of benefits globally. And I must say that I was just chatting with my friend Boya, that getting his feedback about how he finds the conference. He's extremely happy with the discussion we've had and the richness of the reflection, which I'm sure will feed into the work that UNESCO does. And the advantage here, Boya, I can tell you, we know that UNESCO, we are limited resources with all the challenges we face, but this is a partner which will bring to you the expertise, even the resources, and India is always open to this sort of initiatives. So I'm sure the government of India also, where they are well represented here with many eminent personalities, I'm sure this will therefore provide the right framework for you to move forward without so much of financial constraint. Because this is the challenge we have in the UN agency, especially UNESCO, which has suffered a lot of setback, with, many of the big countries which have left UNESCO not paying their fees, their dues and so on. So that, therefore, is a good way for you to mobilize those support and move forward. Well, I think that, the island nations are today facing existential threat, and urgent measures are required to manage the challenges and opportunities. The blue economic growth is a necessity and must be prioritized along with the strategic security. Environment and disaster management needs far deeper understanding of the local conditions. Maritime governance must bring a comprehensive digital transformation to allow transparency and equitable growth for all. The UDA framework brings a safe, secure, sustainable growth model, and I feel it will be the appropriate tool for driving the maritime governance mechanism in the entire Indo-Pacific region. What I find very interesting and appealing is the fact that UDA framework not only addresses the concerns of the marine, but also the freshwater system. It truly addresses the challenges and opportunities of the tropical littoral regions. The way ahead could be fivefold to bring policy and technology interventions along with acoustic capacity and capacity building. One, a focused initiative to prioritize the UDA framework across the entire tropical littoral region to start with. UNESCO may like to drive this initiative with back-end support from the MRC and NDT. The initiative should be backed by science and technology, with significant priority for local site-specific R&D and field experimental validation. Innovation is the key to success. The second point, the traditional knowledge that has ensured continuation of civilization in the subcontinent for over 5,000 years deserves far more importance. And the water archaeology is a specific domain with high technology requirement. UNESCO may like to support an under-the-water archaeology initiative driven by the UDA framework to make sure end-to-end outcome-based programs. The third point, sustainable blue economy, particularly in the tropical littoral waters, will require technology tools to support the real-time data analytics and monitoring. Digital transformation in the underwater domain will require massive acoustic capacity and capacity building. UNESCO may like to plan an outreach, engage and sustain initiative across the entire tropical region, right from Africa to South Asia. Fourth point, the demographic advantage we have in the tropical region requires urgent measures to find meaningful engagement for the young. The UDA framework could provide unimaginable opportunities for the population on multiple levels. The coastal communities and the associated stakeholders can be galvanized under the UNESCO-led initiative. UDA summer school and field visit would be a good start. Fifth point, setting up of a center of excellence under the UNESCO could be a more structured way to drive acoustic capacity and capacity building. I am looking at the near future. I'm not looking at the immediate, but this is something which could develop, this vision could develop into a concrete action, and UNESCO is very good at setting up centers of excellence. And so MRC and NDT already has reasonable recognition within the Indian Ocean region and could contribute significantly towards the Naval initiative. Well, I must say that with regards to my own experience with India, when I was secretary of the executive board of UNESCO, how India came forward to establish in India with UNESCO the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Peace and Sustainable Development. And this is a major initiative, and India came forward and provided all the funds that needed to set up that institute, which is a UNESCO institute in Delhi. There was a lot of hesitation from the member state, but I was as secretary of the board. I could see what was happening and work together, and we have this institution. What I'm trying to convey that I've worked with India for some 14 years as Minister of Education. I know the commitment, the willingness of doing something good for humanity, not only for its own sake, but for humanity. And this is something for humanity. And I'm sure UNESCO, MRC, India, and other partners joining together could certainly make a major breakthrough in this field. I wish this works up all the success that it deserves, and I'm sure the outcome will be certainly well noted. And I leave it now to my good friend Boel to take it forward with your director and your future director, so that UNESCO headquarters can also be involved. And I believe at some point in time, it may be good. This is my own sharing my own experience with
Please do
you.
not panic.
Sharing my own experience, how things move forward within the UNESCO structure
For evacuation.
is at some point, I think it may be useful, this could develop further, then India can submit an item on the agenda of the executive board to bring it to the attention of the board, and that could lead to further development, which can then take it to the general conference for a major, decision. That would be my advice, my suggestion in how you take it forward to that level. So thank you very much once again, and I wish all of you the success that you deserve for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your very kind words and very clear way forward. Thank you very much. We have a small section where we would like to request some of our senior guests to give their comments, probably starting with Rani ma'am.
Thank you, Arnab, for the opportunity today. Good afternoon to all distinguished panelists. I work with the Confederation of Indian Industry, the international division. I've had the opportunity to be with the Africa desk for the past 10 years. My curiosity led to find out what is happening with the African students who are studying in India, what challenges they are facing. So in 2015, I started engaging as a personal initiative. I organized few activities like interaction with Indian industry, visits to companies, some workshops on entrepreneurship. So today I'm wearing the cap of advisor to the African students studying in India. And some of them who are here, they are from the Gambia. Katinda is from Zimbabwe. And we have few others from Tanzania, from Mali. Just to give you two examples, there was one student from Kenya who came to India to study IT, but he did not like his university and he didn't study basically. He wandered around in India, and I met him a few years ago and I recommended him to the Symbiosis University, Pune, who agreed for a scholarship. And this year he graduated and he has started a startup called Skiza, which is for teachers training. The second example is of Patrick from Uganda, who wanted to intern with one of our think tanks, and I connected him with RIS. They have now employed him as a part of their global development cooperation in Uganda. So these are two examples which I am happy that I could contribute something. Speaking about challenges in capacity building between India and Africa, though India has done a lot of things in small ways, but it is not visible. It's not spoken about in Africa, and it's not visible. So we need to look at a bigger picture. How to have, say, for example, since post-COVID healthcare awareness is there in Africa, and they feel a need of healthcare facilities in Africa. So how can we look at having, say, a medical university in East Africa and maybe invest, so with complete related services, including training for nurses, for doctors, for paramedical staff. So similarly, agriculture, food processing, because there is so much organic food in Africa, but it's all wasted because they don't have the industry. We import apples and other fruits from Australia, but nobody has thought of importing from Africa. So that can be looked at as, providing solutions, training in different areas. Infrastructure, of course, is a challenge in Africa where public-private partnership could be looked into, and young leaders like them can be trained, especially internet connectivity. If you want to have online classes or courses, for us it's okay, but they face a challenge in internet connectivity and other services. We have been sending teachers many years ago to Africa, so that could be revived in some ways to address the gap which their universities face. We've been organizing the India-Africa Higher Education Summit, and some of these challenges have been discussed. So India has the capacity to handhold, but we need to identify what each respective country needs. And according to the needs, we identify the areas of cooperation. And I have organized one webinar with Cameroon Chamber of Commerce because the students who study and go back to Africa, they don't get a job or they don't have a provision to access finance to start a business. So how can they help? Because India cannot come in the picture, it's their government which has to look into. The other interaction we had with Daikin company, Daikin has a mandate to train around 10,000 Africans in the servicing industry of air conditioners. So we had an interaction with all these students, and they have a training center here in Nimrana where they're happy to provide training centers. So these are a few of my initiatives, and our relationship has grown over a period of time, and I've been given the title of Mama Africa. Thank you.
Arun, sir?
Thank you. Excellencies, Commander Arnab Das, Founder Director of MRC, whom I respect a lot, distinguished panelists, and others who are watching this online. First of all, I would like to compliment and salute the United Nations for Sustainable Goal number 14, which was all about, or which is all about life below water. Now, as a naval officer with a background in operations, I started thinking, how does it affect my country and me? So I would like to just highlight that warfare at sea today, unlike it's on land, has many dimensions. It's the space, cyber warfare, air, on the surface of the water, and below water. Now, below water is where the UDA framework and our vision comes in place. If you were to see the map of India and the oceans around it, you would find that the global supply chains and the routes traversed with the critical cargoes are all traversing in and around India. The Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, it goes to South Africa, and it goes into the Pacific and Indo-Pacific. So what is my role as a naval officer, as a maritime visionary? What should I ensure? I have to ensure that trade flows freely and the seas, which are a heritage of mankind, are available to all countries and nobody dominates it. To be able to achieve it, I have to consider the age-old concepts of sea control and sea denial. Sea control is by warships, by aircraft carriers, etc. as a naval officer in times of problems. But sea denial is where a submarine will operate and it will prevent the movement of cargo. As the Honorable Governor, His Excellency pointed out, over 95% of our trade for India is over the seas in ships. So what can I do? I have to make sure that firstly, the resources of the sea, the living and non-living resources of the sea around me are protected. The United Nations has given me the power by regulating through the UNCLOS, the United Nations Conference on the Law of the Sea. We have established an exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical miles around ourselves, in which we have the right to exploit the living and non-living resources which are there. Now, if we are not taking enough care, they will be overexploited. And today, according to the United Nations estimate, over 3 billion people of the world depend on the oceans for their livelihood. And we are part of the 3 billion. In the Indian Ocean, there are so many countries which border the seas. So we have to protect it as India. We have to protect that and take an initiative to make sure that the voice of these people in this area are heard. Now, to protect it when there is a problem, we must know what is on the seabed and how to deploy assets, whether it is in peacetime, to protect and preserve our cultural heritage and to be able to forecast fish and other food stocks and prevent them from overfishing and replenishment of those and algae, etc., which are used today in cosmetics and other food chains. As far as a naval officer is concerned, I must tell you, I have to be able to find a submarine which is protecting me from safeguarding my interests and those of the countries around us. It is for that the MRC's work is a pioneering work. I have personally been in the last conflict that we had in 1971 on an anti-submarine warfare frigate, looking for a target. But the sonar beam, the sound beam, was so degraded by the ambient noise that we could not detect. My sister ship unfortunately sank in front of my eyes. It's a nightmare which I have never been able to live down. But if I had MRC doing this pioneering work, which today's in digital oceans, they are capable of doing, applying modern techniques of artificial intelligence, machine learning, analytics, and giving me the capability to not only fight or prevent hostilities, but also non-state actors. Because today an underwater platform is available to anybody, and it can damage the offshore installations, it can damage ports, harbors, it will lead to pollution, seepage of oil, etc. And from this information, I will also derive the health of the mammals and fish, etc., which are in the ocean, and take action when pollution takes place due to oil spills, etc. Rerouting. And today we are well aware of what the pioneering work was done using the AIS predictions. I am aware of that. And the total focus of the UDA framework, pioneered by MRC, cannot but help get enough support. And for that, I thank you, sir, and your organization for coming forward, and Dr. Anu Mudge to say that he will also lend a helping hand. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I request Ambassador Mudgal sir to kindly give his closing remarks.
Thank you, Arnav. In fact, it was exciting to listen to everyone. That's how your presentation was very emotional. I'm looking forward to further comments by Mr. Bayer, or my dear friend. Suramanji, I think, is left.
No, he's coming back, sir. He just stepped out for 15 minutes.
And of course, Puran and Sahil, sir. Everyone, Indrani. Finally, you, Arnav. You have been the soul of this process. Yes. You know, I have dealt with oceans and blue economy now for at least 10 years, from very close quarters. Starting with, as my dear friend Abashuraman mentioned, and Arnav, starting with the development of the concept of Sagar, because that was the first time that we came out with an essential policy approach, how India will look at the maritime affairs, right? And you pay attention to this, please. Sagar is security and growth for all in the region. Now read every word carefully, because till then, whenever we were talking about maritime affairs, most of the time we were talking about maritime security. How to protect the sea lanes, how to provide security to a particular country or a region. But then we ask this question. We have to ask this question, for whom is the security? Is there an end user of that security? And our answer was very clear. It's the human being, we human society. It is for us. And what is that we are looking for? We are looking for, I go and talk to students in schools, colleges, universities. And most of the time I ask them, I said, before I talk to you, please tell me what is your expectation from life? And what do they tell me? Nothing new. They say, sir, we want a better life. And when I talk to people who had better life in Europe, I said, what do you, they had good life. They want better life, still better life. Now, better life is endless, right? And sometimes we confuse better life with comfort, right? With the hardware that we have around us. Good cars, good houses, good air conditioning, good computers, best cell phones and things like that. But I don't blame people. That is how the human society from time to time defines what is called good life. Now, if I tell them, sorry, I will redefine good life for you, they will tell me simply, sir, get out of this room, because we do not want you to redefine what is good life according to us, right? Now, if that is good life, which means the materially defined good life is good life, all right, there is some non-material stuff, but primarily, you want good education, you want good healthcare, you want food, you want to travel, you want good jobs, you want wonderful transport, as I said, housing and all that stuff. If that is good life, now we have to look at how do we achieve that good life for everyone? Not few. Because we have been able to provide very good life for few at the expense of a very large majority who did not even have means to decent survival. Normally I try to simplify things which are otherwise complex. I was looking at, for example, what is our economy today? Because one simple way of looking at good life is what kind of economic resources you have. Somebody said, sir, the simplest way of looking at good life is tell me the per capita income or the total GDP. Because at the end of the day, you may need that money to create that good life. You know, I was looking at what is the quantum of that resource at our disposal today, which will be utilized for creating good life.
You mentioned accounting. Today, if we are sitting on, say, a global resource of something about 100 to 103 trillion dollars, right? There may be errors to the method, there may be other ways of calculating it, but the simplest way that we understand today is the GDP. And today we are sitting on a GDP, global GDP of 100 and 203 trillion dollars, a ballpark figure, right? Then I was looking at it. Now we all want good life, right? What kind of growth parameters we are looking at in the medium to long term? Now, reasonable growth estimate, I'm talking of global, not India or a particular country, probably will grow about 3% per year, right? This is a very, very reasonable kind of a figure for global economic growth. It could be 3, in best case scenarios, could be 4%. Maybe, if you're lucky, could be 5%. But even if it's 3%, in next 20 to 25 years, we expect to double the GDP, which means in next 20 to 25 years, we expect to add another $103 trillion to the size of the economy. Now, we created $103 trillion over the entire lifespan of human civilization. We went through wars, we went through colonization, we went through Industrial Revolution 1, 2, 3, and all that stuff. And all those efforts, we have arrived at $103 trillion. And now we want to add another $103 trillion in next 20 to 25 years. How shall we arrive at this additional $103 trillion? You will need resources. Tremendous amount of resources will be required. The materials, the technology, the skills, the human resource, infrastructure, energy, you count it as a long list. Food, education, and all that stuff. Now those resources, where will these resources come from? For reaching at $103 trillion today, we have digged into the earth's resources and what we have done to the earth. I'm sure everybody knows we have messed up the complete planet. We cannot breathe the air. We cannot drink water. The forest has been deforested. The rivers are polluted. The biodiversity has been degraded, which means for reaching at $103 trillion, we've already messed up the whole thing. Now, if we add another $103 trillion, where shall we go? Right? There is a risk. But can we manage the risk? Right? There was always a risk. The human society always had risk. It was never risk-free. Now we are facing a risk. How best can we handle it? There are two ways we can get those resources. One is reduce the resource intensity of growth, which means can we reduce the resource requirement for achieving the same economic output? The answer is yes. The technology which helped us in messing up the planet can also help us in reducing the resource intensity of growth, right? I'm sure you talk about circular economy, where we'll shift from the linear model to the circular model, where there will be minimum waste. One way of that will not be enough. We will need additional resources. Over and above this circular economy, we'll still need additional resources. And where are people looking at now? At the oceans. Now, having messed up the land part, now we are looking at messing up the water, because so far we didn't understand the water so well. We think we can get additional resources from the water. Yes, we can. Because look into the history, we have already got a lot of resources from water. Oceans have given us food, they have given us energy, they have given us transport, they have given us recreation, they have given us all kinds of energy. They have provided employment to people. Now, if the oceans can do it, then what is the worry? Let's go to the ocean, extract everything, and have $103 trillion, right? But the problem is, what about the oceans? How are the oceans reacting to what we've already done to them? The ocean is already suffering from pollution, acidification, loss of biodiversity, and above all, warming. Now, Avinash is not here. He mentioned 1 degree up, and you already mess up the whole thing. That is why, under the Paris Agreement, we say, all right, cap it at 1 degree to or 1.5 degree. Now, if the ocean is already in bad shape, how will that give us additional resources? Which means we can go to the ocean and make sure that we do not damage the ocean. And also undo the damage that you've already done. But unfortunately, so far, we had been looking at the surface of the ocean. Ships are going, people are swimming, right? All that stuff at the beach. We thought that was ocean, right? But most of the resources and challenges the ocean offers, they are underwater. They're not on the surface. And so far, our understanding of the underwater almost next to negligible, in fact. As part of the Blue Economy framework, we produce a knowledge paper as task force. We produce another sectoral report as task force. We produce a national framework for Blue Economy as part of the Economic Advisory Council. I remember very clearly when we were talking about sustainable use of blue economy or oceans, we were talking about one way called the marine spatial planning. But believe me, marine spatial planning cannot be done unless you understand underwater domain. Overwater domain is only one part of the story, and that is probably a simpler story to handle. But underwater, over the water, you can see it with your eyes, you can see it with the satellite, you can see it with the radars. There are so many ways of looking at that, right? But underwater, because 90% of the resources we are talking about and 90% of the challenge which will come underwater. Pollution is, most of the time, it's underwater, other than plastic, which is floating on the surface. Acidification is underwater. Oceans are the single largest carbon sink. We are willing to spend trillions of dollars on carbon sink, but they are the natural single largest carbon sink. You raise the temperature, it cannot absorb carbon dioxide. They are producing 50% of the oxygen. You raise the temperature, the capacity to produce oxygen will deplete. And if you raise the temperature, it will undermine the water cycle. And once the water cycle is impacted, your land will get affected by that, either through flooding or through droughts. You raise the temperature, the biodiversity will get degraded further. Therefore, I have been breaking my head against goals that we need to understand the underwater domain of the oceans before we further expand our economic activity into the ocean. And this is a very, very complicated and complex thing. There is a chemistry to this, there's a physics to this, there's a biology to this, there's a geology to this, there are so many things. I read a report 2 days ago. It shocked me, in fact. It says they never noticed by us the plate movement under the ocean can suddenly stop the ocean's circulation. And this can be a total disaster for life in ocean. But it will not be a disaster for life in ocean. It will also be a disaster for life on Earth, on land. So now the question is, Arnav, how do we do it? Right? What I discovered during my all reports was that ordinary people's awareness of the ocean is almost zero. Almost zero. I deal with the universities through Association of Indian Universities. I've spoken to almost 60 vice chancellors from different universities. And I was shocked that even the universities have no idea about how the higher education can contribute to achieving the sustainable development goals. Under the best case scenario, they know there are 17 goals, right? And they know that, all right, under each goal, what is mentioned. But what exactly that means to the society, that knowledge is simply lacking. And without education from school to the top, if that awareness is not created, we can simply forget the vision for SDGs. It won't happen. Unfortunately, we are not able to project on simple solutions in simple language to the complex problems. We take pride in giving complex answers to complex problems, or sometimes even to the simple problems. Can we simplify our language so that an ordinary person is able to understand the whole thing? Sir, you rightly mentioned, take people to the ocean, for God's sake. Let them see that their life depends on this. So that before a child throws a plastic bottle into the ocean, he must remember that this ocean is responsible for keeping him alive. In fact, we had this Cameroon conference. Very simple. He says, sir, the simplest solution to finding the solution to this plastic in the ocean is, please don't throw. Yes. Rather than developing a very sophisticated vessel to collect it and then to process it, then to reprocess it, please, for God's sake, don't throw. Is that complicated? But you tell somebody, don't throw, that's the solution. They say, what kind of scientist we got? He is giving me a solution which I always knew. But nobody told him, please, that's the best solution. Don't throw. Yes. So please, I've taken already more time than I was slotted for. I think, Arnav, for you, I told you the other day also, this journey will be frustrating. But don't give up. Because the value of this journey is much more than any one of us is able to contemplate. Yes. We need to carry the message to people. We need to carry the message to students. We need to carry the message to industry. We need to carry the message to the policymakers. We need to carry the message to the international organizations. This job cannot be done by one country, one society, one person. No. It's an entire world community approach which is required for converting our economic development to sustainable development. And if we don't do it, we must remember. So shall our grandchildren see the life as we have seen? Probably it's a big challenge. So I'm very happy UNESCO has agreed to listen to this conversation. For UNESCO, underwater domain awareness means education, means technology, means a heritage, means a history, means culture, means everything. You choose the aspect which you like the most, and UDA will be able to provide it. Yes. So with this, I can carry on talking, but I feel I can't resist telling you a beautiful story. I was in Latin America. I would not name the country because it's not appropriate for me. There was a village called the Ghost Fishing Town. Now, I want to know as a diplomat, we all want to know these exotic terminologies, right? So we went to this Ghost Fishing Town. But then I said, what is this Ghost Fishing Town? So we'll tell you the story. Now, the story could be an anecdote, but it makes a lot of sense. There was a group of islands off the coast, and these islands used to receive large number of birds, migratory birds. Now, these migratory birds created what is called a sanctuary, where a lot of tourists will come to see the birds, right? So tourism industry, right? Now, these birds will drop a lot of bird droppings because they were in millions. So these droppings were used for fertilizer industry, right? Some of the droppings will fall in the water, and those droppings will increase the organic content, and as a result, a lot of planktons and phytoplanktons. A lot of phytoplanktons and planktons means a lot of fish. So there was a large fishing industry. So you had a good fishing industry, you had good tourism, and you had a bird sanctuary, right? And you had the fertilizer plant, and the town was prosperous. And one day, some smart fellow like me, who didn't understand the underwater domain, he suggested to the fishing people, he said, why can't you fish with more? Now, traditional knowledge, sir. The traditional fellow said, sorry, we cannot fish smaller than this. He said, why can't you do it? There's so much of plankton there. They will recover, they will breed. So they reduced the size of the net and started catching smaller fish. And the life cycle of the fish got disturbed. As a result, suddenly the fish disappeared. Now, when the fish disappeared, the birds disappeared. The birds disappeared, the droppings disappeared. As a result, tourism went, fishing went, fertilizer went. And the town became Ghost Fishing Town. Before we become a ghost land on, before we become a ghost earth, I think we need to be careful and play our role with the oceans with greater responsibility and greater sensitivity and greater knowledge. With these, I'll stop. I can carry on. Otherwise, thank you so much, Anu.
Thank you so much. I think very strongly put, but I think it makes tremendous sense, and the way you put it, definitely. So thank you so much. Oyer, I think the last word from you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Where should I start?
There you began.
Tell me, where should I start giving a concluding remarks for this meeting? So first of all, maybe just with a vote of thanks for everybody who is still here, and also for those who are not here anymore. And of course, our participants online, and also, of course, Arnab, for you to bring this all together at UNESCO. And who knows, maybe UNESCO should not be the only UN agency that you should be working with. But I can assure you that this meeting is the start of our collaboration, and I'm extremely impressed to be in a meeting, and this is very rare because I've been in hundreds of meetings as a listener and as a speaker, but in this meeting, every speaker actually said something. You know what that means? So let me go through my notes. And first of all, UNESCO is a little bit different than other UN agencies. We are often referred to by some people as the intellectual arm of the United Nations. Others also like to call us the conscience of the United Nations. And with all the passion that I have seen, the last speaker of your good self, I mean, your speech was extremely passionate. This links to the conscience of the United Nations because you addressed our grandchildren. My children are just 23, 20, and 18 years old, but I'm looking forward for them to have children by themselves, and then I might become a grandparent together with my wife. We would, of course, like that. And we're, of course, very concerned about our children having to wear the brunt of what turbo capitalism, as I call it, as a root cause for so many things that go wrong, have already caused. And we have to find a new way away from that. Capitalism may be fine, but not to this degree that we have it right now. We are using resources of 2.5 planets.
Yes.
Now our children are supposed to pay the price for that, and their children even more, and their children even more. Because that's the way that we are together as humanity behaving right now, including myself. So we should, of course, when we are discussing, and we will discuss this, Arnav, and maybe you can also invite some others to continuously discuss it before we come to a conclusion on the way forward. We should focus on the mandate of UNESCO, which is, of course, a huge mandate. It's like a mini United Nations. And we should focus on achieving the SDGs. I think, sir, you mentioned the SDG 14 when you talk, which is, of course, at our heart. SDGs are all interconnected with each other, all of them. And as I mentioned before, the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, the World Network of Biosphere Reserves, in each biosphere reserve, have a look at this in the evening, over the weekend. Each biosphere reserve embraces all of the SDGs. So our contribution should be a contribution to real existing contemporary issues, such as, for example, climate change, biodiversity, environmental management based on science. Environmental management is, of course, also be done by UNEP. And we could also bring in the United Nations University and UNDP, FAO. FAO is dealing with fisheries. We could also bring in UNIDO, UNOPS. Unfortunately, the United Nations has developed into a place that has almost 60 agencies. I don't believe that there's one person in the UN who understands all, who could count up all the agencies that they are there. But we have a reform going on and it works, and we are working less competitively with each other and more in synergy with each other, very, very clearly since the last 3 years at least. So, yeah, we should mobilize the science, education and culture to achieve the SDGs. Some of you pointed out that we are not achieving the SDGs or not fast enough. By the way, some of the SDGs were supposed to be achieved until 2025. Not all of them until 2030. Again, I'm very happy to have such a formidable audience group, including specialists, young people. You've been very quiet, but maybe also didn't give you enough the floor. But believe me, we are doing this also for you and for Indian young people, of course, as well, and for others, not only for Africans and Indians, but also for others. Very happy to have ambassadors here and former UNESCO staff, and in particular, again, the young people from a whole variety of African countries. Arnab, you mentioned the real world problem solving. Biosphere reserve identification could be one. I mean, Spain is a relatively small country. Europe hasn't realized yet that there are a lot of small countries in Europe and all the other countries in Europe haven't realized yet that they are small. So Spain has 55 biosphere reserves, India has 12. Now, for me, that translates in there as a potentiality in the giant India. It could easily have 100 biosphere reserves.
Yep.
Now, that of course is a process, and each biosphere reserve in itself is also a process. There are places for nature conservation in reconciliation with sustainable development. So possibly you could assist with the identification of Indian coastal biosphere reserves, marine biosphere reserves. Possibly there could be scientific excursion into coastal areas coming as learning outdoor areas. Countries in the world, as if you don't know that, you probably know that, they have very high military budgets, which they call defense budgets, which not always are defense budgets. Sometimes they are, simply speaking, also war budgets, unfortunately. I don't want to point my finger at anybody, because my own country doesn't have been much better in the history of my own country. But the military budget is very high, science budget is very low, as an imbalance. And also this relates to the fact that many ministers of environment simply studied law or politics at university level instead of studying biology, geology, geomorphology. I mean, I'm not sending somebody on a Navy vessel who is a dentist. I'm sending somebody who went to a military school, right? So why in the Ministry of Environment such an imbalance of not having enough people who actually studied environmental management at the least? The budget before COVID was $2 trillion a year, combined human military budget, 2 trillion. And then during COVID, we would have expected it to go down. Didn't, it went up. And now we are coming out of COVID very slowly, still going up. I would like to quote an Indian good friend of mine from the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of UNESCO Institute of Peace. He and I, we discussed it, and he said, are we crazy? Humanity combined, are we crazy to not solve the problems that we have and to try to solve problems that we don't even have? Somebody mentioned AI and robotics and how this can be best used for science-based socio-ecology, nature conservation, and enhance living conditions. And of course, jobs and income were mentioned by you, and you pointed at Africa. Let me also point out that Africa is not entirely poor. There are many rich people in Africa, and there are some rich African countries, or at least medium income. Your country is one of them, of course. Botswana is another one of them. I've been living in Ethiopia for a long time. There is a lot of richness there as well, and they also have a responsibility to create jobs and income. Cannot just be done by outside Africa. So we have a lot of follow-up and discussions to do, but I'm not finished. I have more to conclude, because you provided such a rich inspiration, and I'm in the unfortunate situation to do the concluding remarks. Africa. I had a discussion with Ugandan specialists recently. They invited me. Uganda made a suggestion, the Ugandan Road Authority, they made a suggestion to develop plastic roads, to put bitumen together with plastic waste, and they suggested to make a collaboration between Thailand and Uganda and India in a form of South-South cooperation. I linked them already up with our friend Hubert Geisen in the UNESCO office in Nairobi, because Nairobi covers Uganda. Nairobi covers also most of the African countries that we have present here, except Gambia. And so that might be a very nice solution, because you said, well, why do we put the plastic in the oceans in the first place? So the microplastic, we can take it out with skimmers. The microplastic, we cannot. And then there is the nanoplastic, which we cannot. And let me inform you, and you might be shocked in case you don't know this yet. Korean and German studies have found out that microplastic has entered the human digestive system.
Yes.
Brand new studies from the Vrije University in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, have found that nanoplastic has entered the human bloodstream. Now, if that's not a wake-up call, what then is a wake-up call? Just that we have more plastic in the ocean than fish? Bloodstream, that means it's in us. And what does it do? How does it release cancerogenic substances into our system? How does it clog up our arteries? We had here from, if I remember correctly, we had Zimbabwe, landlocked. We had Gambia, landlocked. Gambia, of course, half of Gambia is a river. We had Tanzania, which is, of course, not landlocked. It's one of the larger African countries with a long coastline, beautiful mangroves. Mali, landlocked. Ethiopia, landlocked. And thank you very much, Muli, for bringing this together. It's wonderful because this is really respecting the global priority Africa. But anyway, what we're discussing in marine, it doesn't mean that landlocked countries are immune from that. The climate in the landlocked countries is mainly being done in the oceans. And plastic pollution, for example, it comes from the cities through the rivers to the coasts into the ocean. So your countries are also contributing to plastic pollution. And of course, young people in particular, they are dead against that, but they also don't know what to do because as soon as they go to a grocery store, they are flooded with plastic bags. Now, India was the country, the Republic of India suggested in 2018 to celebrate World Environment Day, beat the plastic pollution. India should be very proud of that. And of course, we also, all of us, expecting something from India to come. Maybe what we are planning to do can be a contribution. But I would also like to give credit to another tiny landlocked country that was the first single-use plastic-free country globally, which is Rwanda in Africa. A landlocked, least developed country did that, what North America and Europe and India and everybody else couldn't do. So for me, this translates into if there is a will, there is a way, and the others were just sleeping. There are synergy opportunities with water quality monitoring. In Ethiopia, we have a UNESCO Category 2 Center on regional eco-hydrology for all of Africa. I brought my good friend Johannes Sirihun already together with the National Institute for Urban Affairs here in New Delhi. The dimension between land and ocean, they cannot be separated. Yes, we have more oceans than land, and it's easier for us to live on land than in the oceans, but we are already developing floating islands, floating houses. And as a matter of fact, at UNESCO, we are developing a system called floating mangroves. And we have just released a very beautiful global coverage of mangrove posters with all countries in the world. We did 2 posters for India because it's such a large country, only 1 for Mauritius. And but we also have 1 from the Gambia, because the Gambia has a tiny little coastline, not entirely landlocked. And of course, from a beautiful poster from Tanzania with some little kids training karate behind the mangroves on the beach. So it's a beautiful poster series. Those of you who are interested, please contact me. I will make it available for you. You can download it for free and you can share it with your entire network. It was mentioned that we can use as a diplomatic tool the combination. I think, Arnab, it was you who mentioned that maritime security, blue economy, marine environment, science and technology, traditional knowledge, you put it last. Yeah, couldn't agree more. We have to not think in our silos anymore. And it is very, very desirable, as far as I'm concerned, that military, for example, plays a role, at least in peace times, for nature conservation. I have personally done that in previous duty stations where I've been, with the Saudis, with the Qataris, with the Emiratis, with the Omanis. They gave us helicopters to survey nature conservation areas, and it was extremely useful. So you could also mobilize that in India with helicopters and with vessels, of course, and put some university students on it. Let them experience this. Very exciting, more exciting than boring science. They sit once in a helicopter or they go once in a vessel for a week. They go like, I want to become a marine biologist, or I want to become involved in a profession that contributes to the good economically or socio-ecologically. I'm sure that for you young guys and for the young guys online, I'm sure that this meeting here, even though it's a bit long, it's very unique for you because here people say something. They don't just talk. They say something and it will be translated into action. And you have the privilege to participate in that. Ambassador, you also mentioned that the blue carbon capacity of the oceans, in particular the coastal oceans. The mangroves, the seagrasses, combined with the salt marshes and the storm-burn vegetation in the world, sequesters as much carbon as the entire terrestrial vegetation of the planet together.
Yes.
They don't do it in the biomass. They do it in the soil because they are locked away at high tide. So all the detritus that falls off the tree, not all of it, but a lot of it, it gets locked away in the soil for thousands of years. Considering the fact that we have lost from 32 million hectares of mangroves globally, 17 million, we have only, no, 15 million, sorry, we only have 17 million left. India, one of the countries that has done a lot to bring back their mangroves. But we should really think about bringing back mangroves wherever we can. How much blue carbon is there exactly? We don't know. If there is a soil only very shallow below a mangrove, like a rocky soil, then there is not much carbon underneath. If the soil is very fine sediment, like in the Brahmaputra Delta, or like the Sundarbans as they are called, or in other places, it might be several meters deep. Yeah. So the universities need to be mobilized for that. And that cannot be done on an Indian level or on a Pakistani level or on a Chinese level, on a European. The universities have to come together from all of them and exchange their students. Now, fortunately, a lot of them are actually doing it already. But for blue carbon, there is a lot of research that needs to be done. You suggested a summer school on marine, coastal, and aquatic ecosystems. I'm entirely with you. I think that would be a wonderful idea. Africa can learn from India, and India can learn from Africa. So, and tiny little countries like Djibouti, with a population of 900,000 people, they can learn from a country of 1.5 billion people. But the big one can also learn something from the small one. And the populations are, Africa is expected to reach 2 billion by which year? I can't remember exactly. India will soon overtake China, but with a young population, whereas China has an old population, 1.5 billion both each. But India is expected to exceed by another 200 million. So that also puts this country into a situation by not being number 2 in population, but by number 1 of a very, very special responsibility. And a lot of countries will be looking with interest and hope at a country that has to provide some kind of leadership as well. Center of Excellence on maritime and marine issues combined as a UNESCO center. It was suggested repeatedly. I think it would be a very, very interesting way forward. And Anna, it will be frustrating for you. It will not just be funny, but you have allies. You brought your allies together here today, and there will be more. And my colleague and my director and our future director, we will be there to make our resources available that we have. Professor Mishra mentioned whether it should be planet Earth or planet Ocean. 67% of the planet's surface is ocean. What makes the oceans more important, and almost nobody thinks about that, is that 97.3% of the water that we have available on our planet is in the oceans. 97.3. We only have 2.7% fresh water, and half of that is locked away in ice. But there are centers in the world dealing with the utilization of seawater for the production of halophytic plants, salt-tolerant plants for agricultural and forestry purposes in saline soils. And I would just like to show this. You see the seagrass bed here, the Gulf of Mannar. That's a flowering plant that grows its entire life cycle under the ocean. And that's a dugong. And that dugong has meat. And that dugong feeds on the seagrass. And the turtles do, and the fish do. And the only reason why the cow or the pig or the camel, why they don't do it, because they don't have the behavioral ecology to put the head under the water. Otherwise, they could also feed on that. So seawater utilization, please remember that word. I know that in India something is being done. The Chinese are doing a little bit more. The Pakistanis have a fantastic institute in Karachi, the International Society for Halophyte Utilization, which used to be a UNESCO center. Americans are doing something. Africans are doing a little bit, but not that much yet. But there's much more that we can do. The oceans are productive and they don't need the fresh water. Plastic pollution, noise pollution, many things have been mentioned. Your Excellency, you've mentioned that we are all residents on planet Earth, but that there's a lot of water. So again, you referred also to the oceans, and that the sea has to be managed. Oil pollution, you mentioned as an example. I've been involved in several oil spills in my life before I joined UNESCO. I was involved in the 91 Gulf War oil spill. Remember that? After the oil in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia entered the Gulf?
Yes.
1.29 million tons. And they used tons as a unit, because if they would have used liters, it would be a much bigger figure. I was also involved in the Benuna oil spill and in the development of an oil spill sensitivity atlas, which I don't know if India has that, but it would be a nice thing to do with neighboring countries all together. And of course, the prevention of marine pollution in the Indian Ocean as the production of a book is something that we could jointly do, Anna. I've catalyzed something like that for the Gulf. We published that with the Birkhäuser publishing agency in Switzerland, but now Springer Nature is here in India. We just will have a discussion with them next week. And of course, there's other publishing houses here. So if you would like to do a book, but with books, UNESCO has become, unfortunately, a little bit slow since we have the publication board, but we can still do that.
Drafting a bit of regulation might be also.
Exactly. Could be part of a book or national plans.
Yes.
There are clear warning against degradation, and you suggested to be kind to the sea. Later, when I come to the end, I will conclude on that note, by the way. You pointed out the connectivity between land and sea and the security and the ecology. Then Puram Pandey mentioned the connectivity between ecology and pollution, pointed out the importance to overcome the paradox between ecology and economy. Also, we have climate change. We know where it comes from. A lot of that comes from anthropogenic issues. Yes. Some of it comes from cosmic issues and from planetary issues. But then we have the paradox that we are all using oil. Every single one of us is using. Right now, we are using oil. So we also have to find solutions to this paradox. Again, South-South cooperation and developing a center of excellence would be great. I would also like to thank you again, after you came back, Dr. Amugim, for your remarks and your catalytic function to put all of this together. On peace, some of the speakers mentioned the Indian dimension of security and the Chinese dimension of security. I would just like to remark, as a United Nations official, there is no other way for peace than via togetherness. And I've been scared about what I've seen in East Asia recently. I've been scared of what I've seen in Europe. I've been scared of what I've seen in Ethiopia not so long ago, and in many, many other places. So the togetherness has to include every single country, the 193 member states of the United Nations and UNESCO, and those who are not member states of the United Nations and UNESCO. It has to include all and every single one of us. Whether the countries are small or large, rich or poor, influential or less influential, and we have to consider geological dynamics, population dynamics. We are still growing from 8 billion to expected 10.9 before we reach equilibrium. In Central and South Asia combined, the only country that has reached equilibrium is Sri Lanka with the 22 million. All of the other countries, all the stans in Central Asia, India, have a continuous growth, which puts additional pressure on resources, as we discussed. But at the same time, we need to arrange fair access to resources and fully embracing the Sustainable Development Goals and the targets and achieving them, because these Sustainable Development Goals, they reflect the hopes and challenges of humanity. And before them, we had the Millennium Development Goals. And before that, we had the Stockholm Declaration. And before that, from 1972. And UNESCO warned against the unbridled exploitation of natural resources in 1971, when the biosphere reserves came into existence. And these are the models. And this is why Eric, my boss, called it pockets of hope. I'll come to an end very, very quickly, very soon. His Excellency Anu Mudge. Exactly. You mentioned so many aspects, so I can't catch up on every single one of them, of course, but you asked a challenging question, and I would like to reach out again to the young people who are with us. Don't forget that we've also been young once, and some of us remain young at heart. I'm sure you are one of them. What is a good life? I can only warn everyone about thinking that a good life is material good. Yeah. If we have enough to eat and to drink and a shelter, and there is no SDG for air pollution, by the way, which there should be, and if we have clean air to breathe, which many of us don't have, if we have shelter, access to medicine, pharmaceutical, and that is actually enough. The meaning of our life comes from what are we doing between the time that we are born and before we die? What do we make out of that, so that others can respect us and that we can respect ourselves? That's what makes a life meaningful. Not how much hamburgers I can eat, or if I have a Samsung whatever telephone latest version, or if I drive a Rolls-Royce car, like they show you in some videos that you might. That's not it, and that's not why you go to university. You go to university to master the management of your brain, so that you don't need supervisors anymore. That you can become ministers and researchers and scientists and have a voice in the shape of countries and the international communities. So let us be kind to the oceans.
Yes.
Thank you.
I quickly request just very quickly.
Thank you very much.
Make it really fast. Thank you, one and all, and each one of you for being here, and the online presence as well, for making this workshop such a fruitful exercise. I thank Mr. Falt for not being here, but yes, for providing excellent facilities and arrangements. Thank you, sir, Your Excellency, Mr. Shekhar Dutt, for saying that India should have a sea consciousness, an ocean consciousness. And no, we don't go enough to the ocean, we don't go. But no, there is a friend of mine whom we've had as an MRC speaker. He came and spent half a day with the students at the summer school in Goa, Captain Dilip Donde, Commander Dilip Donde. And Dilip is, he's a personal friend, and I told him that, Dilip, I want you to be more famous than Sachin Tendulkar. our most famous cricketer, because Sachin will make India a great cricketing nation, but not a great nation. If we follow Dilip and go to the ocean, we might become a great nation. We'll surely become a great nation. So I think Dilip Donde should be a national hero, and most people don't know him also. I mean, I feel very sad when I ask people, do you know Dilip Donde? And most people say we don't know him. As far as your statements are, you said that you knew Dr. Arogya Swami Paul Raj. I'd like to tell this august audience that there are only 5 officers from the Indian Navy, and the first officer was Dr. Arogya Swami Paul Raj, who started the Sonar program in the Navy. And the 5th officer is here with us, Dr. Commander Arnab Das. And unfortunately, for whatever reasons, I don't know, I am not competent to remark on that, all 5 the Indian Navy lost.
No. Arugaswamy Paulraj is a world.
Yeah, he's at Stanford University,
Stanford,
but he left the Navy, sir.
Yeah.
He left the Navy for whatever reasons, but he's advisor to the Prime Minister of India now, and he's the person who wrote the 4G protocol for the world. He's done extremely well for himself.
Also, he got
the Marconi Award, yes, sir.
Marconi Award.
Yes, sir.
For extensive research. And one of them was, I asked him while going from my room to the defense minister room, 30 yards, that what is your next project? And he said, in a small little, mobile at that time, 2005, is I'm putting the word into this.
Yes.
And it is. So really
an amazing gentleman, and he's Arnab's Commander Das's mentor. So I'm very happy to share this with you. And one more thing which we don't know, the Sonar classifier for the nuclear submarine of India, the INS Aryanth, has been built by Dr. Das. So I'm very happy to have been associated in this journey of ours. I call ourselves a startup think tank. And when we started, he came to me, I said, I don't know anything about this subject. I was totally blank. And he said, no, I want you to be my advisor. I said, what will I advise you? I mean, I don't understand anything. But I said, anyway, let's see what we do. It's baby steps. In 5 years, we are very happy and glad that we've reached the UNESCO, the conscience of the world, of the United Nations. And thank you so much, Your Excellency Armugam Parasuraman, sir, for having catalyzed this event, like he said, and make it possible. Thank you, Dr. Commander Sehgal, he's been our mentor in Delhi, and he's always been there for us. Puran Pandey, sir, for your statement that the Taiwan Straits could be weaponized, but yes, that's one big threat. I hope it never happens, the war or the conflict between India and China. We live and utilize those resources far better. And thank you, sir, Ambassador Anu Mudge, sir, for your story and anecdote. It summed it up all, the ghost fishing village. I mean, and I'm so glad that we didn't go into the ocean.
Yes.
I hope when we go into the ocean, we are far more wiser, far more saner, and far more responsible of how we try to become and double our $103 trillion to $206 trillion. Thank you very much, the young delegation from Africa. I've got a very fond memories of Africa because I summited Kilimanjaro, the highest point in Africa, in 2002. That's ancient history now for me, and for Mama Africa to get them here. She's a very dear friend of mine, and I'm so glad she's got involved. She's handled the Africa desk earlier for CIA, and now she's heading the multilateral desk. So thank you, everyone. I would like to thank Avinash Mishra, sir, that yes, we are not, whether we are the planet Earth or the planet water, but definitely we are the blue planet. We are a blue planet. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, everyone online for being there. And like in the Navy, I learned from Commander Das that they never say, have a nice evening. They say, have a good day. Whatever time of the day, whether at night or it's still have a good day. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Siddiqui, Dr. Shahid Siddiqui, he's the senior editor international affairs from Wakanda. He's the presence of the media here. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being.
One thing I was thinking that plastic seems to have evolved as a kind of a really one single big concern. If I've seen a plant of CIPIT, that Central Institute of Plastic Technology, and they had done this, that convert through pressure, high pressure and temperature, plastic into furnace oil. It can be done. And I've seen that plant. I don't know why it has not been scaled up and increased, because furnace oil is definitely required in all kinds of industrial use. And the plastic can be converted into furnace oil.
And last but not least, Dr. Benno Boer for a flourishing finish. He hit a 6 at the finish for really summing up so well, sir. Thank you so much. And we look forward to a collaboration and a long relationship with the UNESCO.
That's very
On
kind.
behalf of the MRC, thank you very much. And the staff of MRC for making all this, the support which we get online, and for being here. She's the communication head of MRC. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.